Out of the gates and ready to go. Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow is underway on this Friday edition. Glad you're with us. If you're streaming us live on YouTube through the YouTube page, search out OutKick, subscribe to the channel. Chad is in the chat. Glad you're there listening to this great radio partner as well, or throughout the OutKick network of ways to consume the show.
Chad, we got a Sharpie to get away from you.
Yeah, thank you, man. We got a jam-packed show today with Ben Leber, Minnesota Vikings radio and TV analyst. He will join us coming up in 20 minutes. Much to discuss for one of the teams who could be sellers at the NFL's trade deadline later this month. Michael Fabiano, well, he's going to buy or sell some of the players to start or sit later this weekend across your fantasy football rosters. The very best from Sports Illustrated coming up later this hour as well. Michael McHenry, Major League Baseball analyst for us. He jumps into the mix and in studio coming up in hour number 2. Kelly in Vegas. And Chad Withrow's top 10 games of the college football weekend also on tap today. Chad, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Hunt. Big show today. Excited, ready to go. We're well into the weekend now. As on this show, weekend start on Thursday. A little bit bitter about my Braves' performance, where they just forgot how to hit.
What happened?
They forgot how to hit. I don't know how to explain it.
Except for Austin Riley.
Yeah, they played one way all season, and they were doing uncharacteristic things. They were swinging for the fences on sliders and not trying to take it the other way. It was just a very, very uncharacteristic performance by the Braves, and not happy about it. Our friend Ariel Epstein posted this, and I agree. She said, "You expect me to believe the 4 NL MVP candidates, Acuna, Olsen, Freeman, and Betts, go a combined 6 for 43, that's 139, with 0 home runs, and the week off has nothing to do with it? Get out of here. Something's got to change." And she goes on to say, hey, congrats to the Astros. That's 25% of the teams that got the bye that advanced. I don't know what the deal is. I can't sit and put it all on that. But I don't know how a team that hits at a historic level all year goes into a series. And credit the Phillies, they pitched really well. And the Braves knew with Zach Wheeler, they never hit him.
Right.
And that's the one game they end up winning. But that you knew that was going to be a possibility. But disappointing for the Braves, and we'll just go ahead and say it with these two groups right now. The Phillies are more clutch in October. Sometimes it comes down to being as simple as that. They were the more clutch team.
Well, whenever they're facing each other, right? If the Braves are facing any other clubhouse, and I think that's what you're saying, they're winning the series. Their bats are going to work. Like they're the Astros of the NL. The bats are going to work.
It's a bad matchup, and now there's some mental mojo going into it, if there's any future. First off, I think it's become the best rivalry in baseball between the two teams. But if there are future Octobers where they meet up, there is now mental baggage for these Braves. I'm not talking about the Braves of the 90s that couldn't win the World Series until they finally did.
You're saying the young group that's
these Braves
long-term.
That won the World Series 2 years ago, there is mental baggage against these Phillies. That's a problem if they meet up again. Braves, but they're going to keep going to the playoffs, I believe. Braves better pray they avoid the Philadelphia Phillies if they want to advance the playoffs, because they cannot play against them for whatever reason.
Chad, DeShaun Watson, speaking of baggage, got the bag. And now there may be baggage in the locker room. He's not going to play. He's already been ruled out due to the shoulder issue with the throwing shoulder. Stefanski ruled him out officially. He's not going to play against San Francisco. And I bring this up because Stefanski, going back through the week, elevates P.J. Walker as the starter way early in the week. Not as the starter over Watson, but named him the backup to DeShaun Watson going into this Sunday's game instead of the rookie and Dorian Thompson-Robinson. This is a 2 to 4 week injury saga, and we went through part of all of this with Armando Salguero yesterday with OutKick.com. This began the week after a great performance by Watson against the Titans. They dominated Tennessee in week 3. And then he told reporters the following week, before the game against the Ravens, that he was going to play, even though he was on the injury report. And the Browns expected him to play. Medically, they cleared him. And then he made the pregame warm-up decision that his throwing shoulder wasn't ready to go, that he wasn't going to be able to help the team. In fact, he was going to hurt the team if he played. I think that surprised everyone. So much so that Stefanski admitted post-game that it was Watson's decision not to play, not the Browns staff, and that tells us that they felt that he should have played by the initial reaction being that. that it was Watson's call, not the team's. And the locker room had to be just as surprised. Some players even admitted that, like, hey, we thought he was going to play. We didn't know until the last minute. Well, now he's been on the injury report. Shoulder contusion. And this is coming off of a bye week for the Browns. They're hosting the Niners, and the Browns had to feel like with DeShaun Watson, they could pull the upset. Without him, Chad, it's going to be bad. And I expect this situation to involve more than just a bruised shoulder when it's all said and done. Because while it may be easy to smooth over and allow things to just be surface level and vague with what we know about what all this entails, as this continues, so will the chatter. And a 2 to 4 week injury is now going into the third week, and we still don't know all that much. When it started as, well, it's just a pain tolerance issue, and he knows his body better than we do, and he said he didn't want to go, even though he was cleared to play, to where he's been on the injury report and not practicing, and if he does do anything, he's in a practice bubble or inside the facility doing things on his own, trying to get back to the field. It's a bigger issue with this spot than others because it's Watson, because we know that he listens to the chatter and the noise and he doesn't handle it well, and he's the franchise guy that got the fully guaranteed $230 million contract, and the Browns have to just do as he says. And in this case, he's not doing on the field. He's simply rehabbing. And Stefanski goes with P.J. Walker, the vet, because I think he's trying to keep the locker room locked in. If they go back with Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who didn't know if he was going to even make the roster when he was signed to the Browns early prior to training camp, they're going back with the veteran to try to keep the train on the tracks, at least for one more week. But I think the chatter continues.
Perception can be reality at times. And I think everything you just laid out is well said with DeShaun Watson. What I'll say about DeShaun Watson, and this is not a compliment at all to him, he has very sensitive ears. And some guys are comfortable playing the villain and not being liked at all times. That is very clearly not DeShaun Watson. DeShaun Watson was a victim for years and years of reading his own clippings. And those clippings were nothing but positive about things he overcame, about what he was able to accomplish at Clemson, what he was able to do early in his career. We have John McClain on this show, and he talks about all the glowing columns he wrote at the Houston Chronicle and other places about Texans legend quarterback DeShaun Watson. It was all positive for so long. And then there were many, many accusations from massage parlors about DeShaun Watson and his activities. And everything turned at that point. He went from hero to villain. He sat out 2 years, and it's not just about trying to overcome that, whatever his bad actions were. It's about him being sensitive to people not liking him. Aaron Rodgers can thrive in that environment. Aaron Rodgers can talk about not being vaccinated or calling it something different and people hating him, and he uses that criticism to play better and to beat you at times. I don't think DeShaun Watson is that guy. And now the perception is this reality. The perception is that he's soft. Whether he likes it or not, whether his teammates believe it or not, the perception is, because Kevin Stefanski hasn't squashed it, is that he can play, he's been medically cleared, and he's not. And he's the only fully guaranteed quarterback making that money fully guaranteed right now. So I don't know how he's going to deal with that perception. I don't think he's going to overcome it that well. I don't think he's the type that's going to take that and use it as fuel to do big things. I just don't with DeShaun Watson. I don't see it.
Well, and it's, you know my saying, it's not if you lose, it's how you lose. The Browns are going now into a stretch where they'll be losing without Watson, and this all started by him making the decision not to play on his own, not with the medical staff's full opinion, saying it was better off not to play than to play for further injury. Again, we're just getting started with this, because if he plays and he plays through the pain, that garners respect. And by the way, he was voted team captain by the locker room. So there's that. But there's also the captains on the sideline, while P.J. Walker's being elevated after being there for a month from the practice squad to make the start, with the rookie who's on the active roster backing him up. Chad, you mentioned soft. Fan bases can be the alpha or the beta week to week based on what is said. And reading into things that probably don't mean all that much day to day. And if it was said about another fan base or another stadium or another team, it's all taken as a quick conversation and move on. But you mentioned taking red meat and turning it into a tiny bit of red meat and turning it into a full meal. What's the latest example of this with a fan base?
So the Tennessee Vols fan base, it is the epitome of they just want crumbs. They want scraps from the table of criticism, of hate, of being slighted in any possible way. They want that at all times. Tiniest bit of red meat, you give it to them, they will make a meal out of it every single time. The latest bit of tiny bits of red meat that were fed to the Tennessee fan base, and they're ready to feast on it tomorrow at 3:30 Eastern time on CBS, was this quote from Gary Danielson, who will be on the call for CBS. Keep in mind, this is Tennessee's first appearance in the CBS SEC Game of the Week tomorrow against Texas A&M. Speaking to the Knoxville News Sentinel, he says, and he begins with, this is not a criticism, just an observation. It has nothing to do with Neyland Stadium per se or any other stadium. Home field advantage is about the same every week, whether you're playing at Ole Miss or LSU or Florida in the Swamp or Georgia. For a football player, loud is loud. And he goes on to say, I don't know if it makes any difference if there's 80,000 loud people or 100,000 loud people. Now, I think most people would read that and say, okay, I kind of get where he's going with that. You reach a threshold of crowd noise, and in big college football games, you're going to get that. And then everything past that is just white noise, and it doesn't really matter. It doesn't affect the game any more than others. Tennessee fans read that, and they see it as a decree of war from CBS, from Gary Danielson, from the college football media establishment. Everyone is now their enemy for this. Ask Chris Fowler about Tennessee fans, and their ability to take something and run with it, not for just a short amount of time, for close to 30 years in some cases. They hold a grudge better than anyone else. Chris Fowler, after Peyton Manning did not win the Heisman Trophy in 97, came back in 98 during a college game day, and he said it was a trailer park frenzy that was stirred up when Charles Woodson won the Heisman over Tennessee fans. Tennessee fans still remember that to this day. They still harbor resentment towards ESPN to this day.
That's a memorable quote.
For Peyton Manning not winning the Heisman, and also for that quote from Chris Fowler, which to Tennessee fans confirm the inherent bias against orange from ESPN and from everyone who voted on the Heisman or did not vote for Peyton Manning and instead voted for Charles Woodson. I love it. Is it being overly bitter? Yeah. Is it having too much of a chip on the shoulder at times? Absolutely. Does it lead to really good college football environments in Knoxville? Yes. Now, it's going to get old because if Tennessee continues to win the way they did a year ago and they become a 10-win-a-season type team, no one's going to want to hear about Tennessee fans being slighted or that media groups don't like them, especially when they're getting some of the most watched games of the season in primetime slots. It is going to get very old very quickly. But for now, once again, Tennessee fans, they take a little bit of scraps from the table and they turn it into a feast. And they're going to feast tomorrow, and it's going to be a loud environment on national TV on CBS between A&M and Tennessee.
I do understand what Danielson's saying. Loud is loud.
Yeah.
Now, the loudest environment, period, is different than the 10th loudest if we're going by, the Richter scale or whatever they're doing with the how they measure the vibrations from a stadium, right? But
yeah, lumping Ole Miss in with that, I think, is what would offend Tennessee fans more than anything.
There you go.
The Swamp, LSU, Georgia, okay, get what you're saying. These are 90,000 plus stadiums right around there, and Tennessee's 100,000. Ole Miss isn't anywhere close to that.
No.
And it's not going to get as loud. And I would say that you can go back through it. There are a lot of college football players who played in a lot of environments. Tim Tebow was talking about it in the documentary. Many of them will say it's never been louder than Neyland Stadium, that it's a different level of volume when Neyland Stadium really gets cranked up. So I understand Tennessee fans taking that as a bit of a slight, but they are going to overblow this whole thing before it's all said and done. It's not going to end for Gary Danielson. They're going to remember this quote for a while.
Chad, we will remember this season for Sean Payton for a while.
It's going to be a November to remember for Sean Payton.
19-8, the Chiefs beat the Broncos last night on Thursday Night Football. The Broncos are dead last in yards and points allowed, and this is a Denver defense that allowed just 19 points to the Kansas City Chiefs. However, this is a Broncos, it's more than a bonfire. You know, it's the dumpster fires of the week. We have that coming up later in the show. This is the dumpster fire of the football season thus far. They are off to their worst start through 6 games in nearly 30 years. And it's more than just Russell Wilson and what we saw last night where he's stumbling all over the field. 4th down, he's running backwards, losing yardage instead of throwing the football away. It's more than just a bad decision by Payton to take over a Denver Broncos organization and franchise that he felt like coaching would have been the difference. Clearly not. This is a rebuild waiting to happen. And they go from what was supposed to be Payton as the fixer for Wilson to, is Sean Payton now going to be coaching Caleb Williams or coaching one of the top quarterbacks in next year's NFL draft? Because at 1 win and looking down the path of where they're headed, they're in the mix of right now 7 teams who have 1 win or no wins. One of those teams, Minnesota and the Vikings. Justin Jefferson's on injured reserve. Another loss. What happens to Minnesota come trade deadline? Ben Leber joins the discussion next with some other NFL topics with him as well. Coming up on Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow.
Now, yesterday, in the wake of the Trevor Bauer bombshell outing his accuser as a disgusting liar, I made the call to end the Me Too movement. And today, I'm going to continue making that case. What was once born as a push to protect real victims has, in many cases, just like we saw with Bauer, turned into an awful manipulation tactic by immoral women to strip men of their power. And we, as a society, continue to just let it happen. Time and time again, it seems. Such also, as we have seen in the past, the cases of Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, who was on the brink of not being confirmed after being accused of sexual assault stemming from his college years. There was the 3 members of the Duke lacrosse team who were accused of raping a stripper at a party, and former Bills punter Matt DeRiza, who was accused of gang rape. These are just 3 examples, all of which were proved to be untrue accusations. Men have been put through absolute torture. They have had massive opportunities stolen from them. Their lives, livelihoods, and reputations devastated solely because they were Me Too'd. Meaning a woman made a claim and it was accepted as a fact, even though in all of these cases, it was nothing but a lie. The believe all women era, no matter what, must end right now. Even Matt DeRiza, who was still out of a job in the NFL, realizes the threat of it. Here's what he said after being released from the Bills following his untrue accusations.
It's just the climate of how things are now. Accusations bring so much hate to anyone who decides to stand by the accuser that they were kind of forced to cut me from the team.
Now, don't get me wrong. If you are a true victim, I implore you to find the courage to come forward under any and all circumstances. However, if the behavior with the accused man was consensual, let's say, if there is an ulterior motive, maybe a money grab, a play for attention, then please spare us. Don't take the legs out from under real victims who now will no doubt have become discredited because of stunts like the ones I just mentioned. Real victims should be absolutely furious. Just because a woman says something does not mean it should be assumed as fact. And to everyone out there, be careful. Save those receipts. Finally, I also see no reason to continue a movement to protect women when women don't even take the steps to protect themselves anymore. For example, self-proclaimed feminists all over the country are in favor of having biological men in their bathrooms, in their locker rooms, in their sorority houses, in their safe spaces. And even those who aren't outwardly in favor still neglect to stand up against things like this, despite the integration causing an inherent danger for all women. Look how Virginia dad Scott Smith was treated after he confronted the Loudoun County School Board in Virginia after his 15-year-old daughter was the victim of a brutal sexual assault by a transgender in a female bathroom. So how is this dad going to be attacked when he was standing up for his underage daughter? I don't understand it. Where is the concern for this girl's safety? Isn't this a Me Too concern considering she was sexually assaulted? No, it's not. And that is the problem right here, because you can't pick and choose which girls and women get protection under this awareness campaign. And on the flip side, who can be classified as an assailant?
Sixth and Peabody, our location, with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Glad you're with us for Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick network. Chad, right now, 7 teams across the NFL have 1 win or are winless. And this Sunday, Vikings taking on the Bears, where the winner gets out of the NFC North cellar. Ben Leber joins us. He's a Minnesota Vikings radio and TV analyst, and he's a frequent guest of ours on the show, for which we appreciate. Ben, good to see you, man. Hope things are well.
Always good to see you guys. Yeah, things are well. It's rainy here in the Twin Cities, so it's kind of a bad day. So it's good to be inside and be with you guys.
Yeah, man. I don't know if it's good right now to be in the Minnesota facility or not, but
the rain kind of sums things up.
Yeah, it does.
Right now for the Vikings.
So you got the Vikings, Bears. Then they will travel to San Francisco, and then they take on Green Bay. Those 3 matchups ahead of October 31st and the NFL trade deadline. As of right now, should we expect the Vikings to be sellers at the deadline?
No, I don't think so. You know, this is a really good 1-win team. And look, I know that people that watched, they can maybe say otherwise, but we have a really good offense. I think the defense is starting to come around as well. We're blitzing a little bit less, being a little more strategic about our blitzing. We're getting home with the quarterback pressures with more of a 4-man rush, which wasn't the case early in the season. So look, I don't think that we're going to be sellers. I really don't even know if we're going to be sellers, even if we drop this game in Chicago, which I don't think that we're going to do. And the game against the 49ers are actually at home at US Bank Stadium, thank goodness, on Monday night. So even if you drop those 2, I'm not so sure that you should be complete sellers. Look, I know that there's always a price to everything, but it's just weird to even think about that right now based on what we thought about this team at the start of the season.
How much does Jefferson on injured reserve factor into that, though? Knowing that when you look at his numbers and the targets and the fact he can totally dominate a game, Cousins is in the last year of his contract, not expected to be back based on the salaries they're going to give elsewhere, and that they have already handed out to T.J. Hawkinson, for instance. What would motivate Minnesota to move on from Cousins if he were to say, hey, no trade clause, I'll waive that for said team?
You know, I think the only thing that would motivate him to move on was if they internally say, look, Kirk, you're not in our long-term plans. There are rumors that, and I don't know if they are like substantiated by any means, but I just recently heard that JJ said, look, I had a deal at the start of the season. It was going to reset the market. It's going to be the highest paid non-quarterback in the league. And he said, no, I need a commitment from you guys that Kirk's going to be my guy. That's the rumor. I don't know if it's true, but you have to think some of that makes sense for JJ. He knows who butters his bread. JJ, yes, he's fantastic, but he needs a smart quarterback that's accurate, that can get the ball down the field many times a game for him to be successful. So if there has to be more of an open dialogue between the two, a real honest dialogue between Kwesi, the front office, and Kirk. If they say, look, you're not in our long-term plans, the way the season's going, we're going to look at quarterback in the draft or something cheaper in the offseason, then I think Kirk would waive his no trade clause and move on to a better situation.
Ben Leber, our guest, Minnesota Vikings TV and radio analyst. I'm intrigued by the whole decision going in, not necessarily the deadline, but just outlook, because the comparison, I could kind of tie this together. It's whenever Indianapolis lucked into Andrew Luck. You know, they went from Manning to Luck. I mean, Cousins is no Peyton Manning, but he's been really good.
Yeah.
And here's a situation where you've got a great quarterback crop coming up in April, and you've got contracts across the roster that would lead me to believe you'd like to have a quarterback on a rookie contract against the cap. They could be in a great spot, although it's not a great result season.
No, and they could be in a good spot. And that's the thing, man. I would understand personally if the Vikings go, no team's gonna just openly say, "Hey, we're tanking for Caleb, or tanking for Drake May or something like that." Everybody would kind of get the picture if they do start moving some pieces like Danielle Hunter, obviously, or Kirk or something like that. Or I don't know, maybe they move somebody off the offensive line, which I don't foresee happening. But that's the other thing. If the Vikings are to be sellers, I don't think they have a lot of pieces to sell. But by doing so, you do sort of tip your hand and say, yeah, look, guys, we're going for draft picks here. I wouldn't be necessarily mad at that, because you do have to sometimes bite the bullet on the short term, look at the long-term health of the team and the organization. And if they really mean and they really think that the long-term success lies in getting a young quarterback on a rookie deal, I don't think a lot of people will be mad at them.
How much consolation is it in it for Vikings fans that you look at the Bears and that franchise is literally on fire right now as you get ready to play them with everything going on? So if you're looking around the division, and this game's very important for that reason, to take care of business against Chicago, but how much of that does that offer some solace to the Vikings when you see the situation with the Bears?
Well, not only that, I think you're right on all those fronts, that you look at the division and there's a rebuilding process going on with Chicago. And there seems to be this regression from the Green Bay Packers and Jordan Love as well from the start of the season, that, we all see what Detroit's doing. And it seems like they've got the recipe for success. They really believe in what they want to build there, and they're doing a great job building that. So if that team's just going to remain, right now the favorite to win, and these other two teams are struggling, this sort of is maybe a good time to kind of retool your team. And Kwesi's always said, we're looking to do a competitive rebuild. And so he's been telling everybody from the very get-go that we are going to rebuild this thing, but we're not going to do it just by laying down. And last year, they had a lot of games that went their way. This competitive rebuild, we kind of forgot about what that term even would mean, because we were successful. I think this is the year where they really start to look at that term and say, okay, this is what a competitive rebuild looks like. And maybe the timing is right, given that the two other teams in the division outside the Detroit Lions are sort of on a downhill slide as well.
How would you describe what we've seen from rookie receiver Jordan Addison to this point with 19 receptions? And now that Jefferson's on injured reserve, we're about to find out the true number one type status that he could become.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because we've seen flashes. He really flashed in training camp. He hasn't gotten as many targets maybe as they probably wanted to. And Kevin O'Connell said it even this week, that this is the time where, he made the joke about stepping on the gas, referring to his 140-mile-an-hour speeding ticket that he had, that, this is the week. I think the Bears understand that he's going to be featured a lot, and we'll see what he can really do as a true number two receiver. Potentially, does he have it to be a true number one? He does lack a little bit of the height that I think Justin has. He doesn't have quite the range that JJ has. But everybody from day one has applauded his cerebral nature about how he understands how to run routes, how defenses are going to play him, and how he plays off of leverage. And that was from day one. So now that he's had a bunch of months to put all that stuff under his belt, retool everything, learn a little bit more from JJ and Keenan McCardell, the wide receivers coach, I think he's got a lot of what it takes to be a number one. Now he's just got to go out and prove it.
What's been your take on Flores as defensive coordinator and the more aggressive approach that we've seen from Minnesota compared to what we've seen in past years?
Well, I mean, we talk about the pendulum swinging from sitting back on our heels and getting picked apart in sort of a cover two situation to now we are so aggressive that I think, there are times where it sort of leaves our secondary hanging out to dry. I think that is sort of coming back to the middle. We started the first 3 games of the season and we were blitz heavy. I mean, we were so blitz heavy, not always bringing a full on 6-man rush, leaving the guys man-to-man on the back end. But we're always trying to bring that fifth rusher. And I think getting Marcus Davenport back against the Carolina Panthers really allowed Flores to sit back and think, I can be more strategic. I don't have to hang my secondary out to dry. I can just allow more of a four-man rush, but it's going to be a convoluted four-man rush. That's the thing. He's still going to bring 7 guys up to the line of scrimmage. You're going to see Harrison Smith come down to the line of scrimmage. You don't know if it's going to be a nickel blitz. It's going to be a strong safety blitz. He wants to build this idea that he's bringing pressure from all angles, but then in the end, drop some guys out and bring a four-man rush. Having Marcus Davenport in there changes absolutely everything. So as long as he can stay healthy, I really like this attacking style of Flores' defense.
So Hutton mentioned Peyton Manning earlier. I'm going to mention Tom Brady now and saying I'm not comparing Kirk Cousins to Tom Brady, but I think you'll understand with this analogy. Part of the problem with the Patriots and the getting rid of Tom Brady was that at the time, and we saw his last game in New England, he was skipping rocks. He was seeing ghosts in the pocket. He didn't look like Tom Brady. So the assumption was, well, he's going to go somewhere else. He's not going to have Bill Belichick, and he's not going to be Tom Brady, and the Patriots are going to look smart. He goes to Tampa and wins a Super Bowl in year one. I lay all this out to ask, what is Kirk Cousins if he's not the quarterback of the Vikings moving forward? Where is he in his career? If he had to start over in a new offense and go somewhere else, would the Vikings feel like they got burned because he goes somewhere and puts up huge numbers at another place? Or is this just simply the best situation at the best time for him to flourish?
I think, as well as Brock Purdy is playing, and he is to me has solidified his spot there in San Francisco. That's about the only spot that I could see him going. I mean, I know that's not a hot take here. I get that everybody's talking about Shanahan and his relationship from Washington in previous years, but it's that sort of system where he does have a solid running game. He has got a kick-ass offensive line that's going to push people around. They're going to protect him. He's going to get the ball out, and that defense is just as good as that offense. I know that you're probably saying, well, a lot of quarterbacks could play in that system. I just think that Kirk is so smart. He's so accurate. The only thing that he needs is just a consistency at offensive line and a defense that is going to hold up and actually can play from a lead a little bit. I do think the Vikings are getting there. I do think that we need to probably implement the run a little bit more. We need to get a little bit more downhill with Madison and Cam Akers, find a little bit more balance. And obviously in a perfect world, having JJ around. Look, I think that Kirk has what it takes to be a championship level quarterback. The last 2 years with the Minnesota Vikings, we've been successful, albeit without a very good defense. Our defense has sucked the last 2 years. So it has never, to me, been about Kirk Cousins, his play. Does Kirk Cousins have the leadership? Absolutely, he's got the leadership. Talk to any guy in the locker room, either in front of a camera or privately, and they say, like, dude, we love Kirk. I mean, he's got what it takes. He gets this unnecessary criticism from the media because he's not always out there being boisterous and whatever. You start to see that change a little bit last year with Kirk O'Chains and that whole situation. I think, to me, he has not brought a championship to Minnesota yet, not because of the offense or his play, but because the defense as a whole has not stepped up.
Ben Leber has been our guest, Minnesota Vikings analyst for TV and radio. Always great to catch up with you, man. Hope things continue to go well, and we'll catch up soon.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for the
Thanks,
insight. No doubt that the Vikings still view themselves as a wild card contender. I think Detroit, Chad, is one to run away with the NFC North a bit here. Green Bay is slow out of the gate in the first half. I like the Packers, don't love them. I like the way the Vikings are built, don't love the results in close games this year. And this is a must-win, of course, against Chicago. And then they're hosting San Francisco next week. That's the tale of the tape on what happens on the 31st.
Yeah, and Vikings win the division last year by winning all of the close games.
11 of them.
Now this year they're losing all the close games. It's still early enough to where that could flip and they start winning some nail-biters, and that gets them into the wild card picture. But it feels just like a complete reversal of fortunes where a year ago they were that team that found a way to win, and this year that's the opposite so far. So I don't like their chances. They got to beat Chicago this weekend, obviously. But I don't know what the future holds. I hear this term competitive rebuild, and I don't know that that's really sustainable.
It's tough to do.
We'll see, but I mean, I don't know how you do it without starting over at quarterback at some point
They're
and
going
with a young quarterback, or drafting a rookie, especially with Justin Jefferson. And I get what Ben is saying about Justin Jefferson not wanting to rebuild. He doesn't want to start over and build up a rapport with a new quarterback. But that's a great sales pitch and selling point for that new quarterback where they could come in and be successful because why? They have Justin Jefferson to throw to if the Vikings end up drafting a QB.
And then Addison and then Hawkinson and a solid offensive line. And I've said for months, like this is the contracts they're handing out, knowing that it's Cousins on the final year of his deal. You want to have the quarterback on a much lower salary with a plethora of all of the traits that you want at the position for an offensive-minded head coach. I think we're going young at that spot next year for Minnesota, but, I mean, they could have a pretty high draft pick if things stay the way they are, which is just win one and then lose three, win one, lose three, and still competitively accomplish that. Tough to do in the league. The Vikings may be that team this year. Chad, coming up, time to be competitive in fantasy football. The best joins us next, and Michael Fabiano.
I'm here at the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix, but that's not the only big race that's on people's minds. Let's go talk about it.
There's no way Biden can win again. There's just no way. Even the people that voted for him because they didn't like Trump, now at least have to see like senile, not all there, probably won't be alive for 4 more years.
Are you a Trump guy? Or are you a DeSantis guy? Or someone else?
I don't like any of them.
Who's your dream candidate? Who would you want to run?
Myself. I think the best candidates probably are smart enough not to run.
I just hope there's somebody that's young enough to care about the country instead of their politics.
My fear is they get Gavin Newsom from California. And I think it would be the new cool vote for the younger people, and that's what I don't like.
Who do you think on the Republican side would be able to take on Gavin Newsom?
Great question. As a Republican registered, I love what Trump's body of work did, but they're just out to get him and destroy him, and we won't get things done, which is crappy for me to say. I thought DeSantis was going to be the guy. Trump only has 4 years left. He cannot fix everything that just happened in 4 years. And he's going to be battling indictments and all these false stuff for the next 4 years. We won't get anything done. And it'll just be this stalemate in America. That's why I almost don't want him in. But if he is the leading candidate, that's who I'm going to vote for.
Is there any Democrat that you would vote for, consider voting for?
Absolutely not.
What about RFK Jr.?
No.
Who should our first female president be?
Michelle Obama, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Harambe 2024.
We have the 2024 presidential race coming up, and I wanted to see who you thought your favorite TV characters would vote for. Homer Simpson, who do you think he would vote for?
Donald Trump, all the way.
Vito Corleone.
Whoa. Whoever advances the cause of the Corleone family. Yeah.
Tony Soprano. If Tony Soprano is voting in the 2024 election, who do you think he's voting for?
I'm going to go Ron DeSantis.
Okay. Why do you think that?
Just seems like a Ron DeSantis kind of guy.
Is this a meatball joke that you're trying to make right now? What about Homer Simpson?
Homer would vote for Biden because he's a dope.
Who do you think Napoleon Dynamite would vote for?
That's a good question. I actually don't know.
There's a right answer here.
He's voting for himself or Pedro.
There's a Viking show, I think.
Okay.
Maybe that's Hulu. I don't know.
So in the Vikings show, whatever the main character is, who do you think they would vote for in 2024?
Probably a goat or a dog.
I think we have one of those in office right now. So who do you think Jon Snow would vote for in this upcoming election?
I'm going to say Donald J. Trump.
Why do you think so?
Because Game of Thrones is all about drama, and Trump comes with the drama, baby.
Would you vote for Trump from jail?
Yeah, probably. Because at that point, what else do you have to lose?
Okay, would you vote for Trump from a jail cell?
Yeah, baby, I will get Trump out of jail.
Would you vote for Trump in jail?
Oh, yeah.
Based as
The thing that Trump needs to remember is there's another political figure that said, I don't recall very well. Yeah. And that's all he's got to say.
Is there like a dream candidate, someone that you think could like save us all?
Yeah, Jesus.
Amen to that.
Sixth and Peabody, our location, with Yeehaw Beer, Old Smoky Moonshine. Happy Friday to you. It has arrived. I'm Mike with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick network, joined by Michael Fabiano. He is the fantasy football expert, great analyst for Sports Illustrated, joins us weekly. Michael, great to see you, man. Hope things are well.
All is well. A lot of injuries, though, going down this week. A lot to report on, especially today. Running backs in particular are going to be hard to come by.
This is a great example of why all those that say, why do you draft a running back so early? Why do you waste the first-round pick when the projected scores, I know you hate those, for the season are less than what the quarterback or receivers are going to do? And it's based on depth right now when no one is going to be willing to trade you a player that's going to be able to produce points for you.
And I've been trying to make trades because I'm deep at wide receiver because I went 0 RB or hero RB in my drafts. But running backs are so hard to come by now that people want more than I want to give up. So, for example, I have a league where I've got injuries and I've got problems with buys. We've got a couple of teams off. I'm losing Aaron Jones this week, and I haven't had him for the last few weeks. I have to start Dalvin Cook, and I hate it, but I have no choice. And I tried to make a trade for even an Alexander Madison or, a low RB2 type. And the teams all want a really good wide receiver in return, and I'm just not willing to do that.
As far as Thursday night football is concerned, should we just make a rule that says unless you have the top tier elite talent, don't play them on Thursday night? Not many points in fantasy are coming out of Thursday night football for me.
Yeah, Thursdays kind of stink. We've had our issues with Thursdays for a long time now. And in the game last night, the Broncos had Cortland Sutton, who made that amazing catch, and that was it. Their backfield was a three-headed monster, and it was a mess from a fantasy perspective. Russell was terrible statistically. And even I know that you're not supposed to say anything bad about Patrick Mahomes, but he's averaging 19 points a game this year. Last year, he was closer to 25. I'm not getting what I drafted Patrick Mahomes in the second round for. I am looking for elite production. And right now, Patrick Mahomes is not putting up elite numbers from a fantasy perspective. I'd love to see the Chiefs get a wide receiver at the trade deadline, which goes down in a couple of weeks.
Is Stroud the biggest producer right now at the position, and who's around him?
No, Stroud has had 3 really good games and 2 kind of stinkers, but he's been very good, and he's been way better than people projected. He hasn't thrown an interception so far this year, which is incredible for a rookie quarterback. He's more of a matchup-based guy. Like this week, they've got the Saints. It's not a great matchup, so I don't know that I'd particularly play him. Really, the elite guys remain Mahomes, although his numbers have not been elite. Jalen Hurts has been very good. Obviously, Josh Allen has been a stud as well. Those are still the 3 top guys, although Justin Herbert is in that mix now, too. He's been very good under Kellen Moore.
So Jan in the YouTube chat has a question for you. Wants to know about Jordan Addison now that Justin Jefferson is out. Is that worthy of elevation given more opportunities now that Jefferson's not going to have those opportunities?
No question. Jordan Addison is a wide receiver 2 this week. He's a wide receiver 2 until further notice, and maybe he becomes a wide receiver 1. We'll see. The Bears defense not good against perimeter receivers, so Addison's a really good play this week. He's not JJ. He's not going to replace those type of numbers, but can I get a floor of 12 to 14 from Addison while Jefferson's out? I think that's probably a pretty good projection.
So every week I'm going to have a question about my own fantasy team also. And this week's predicament, Michael, was that I went into Monday Night Football with Jordan Love and Devontae Adams left to play. And I think I was down like 13 points going into it. I'm thinking, this will be over by halftime. I'll have that easy. 3 picks later, no targets for Devontae Adams, or not many to speak of later. I think I lost by 1.4 points on the night when it was all said and done. But here's my question with that. That was my complaint. Now my question is, should I be worried about Devontae Adams and what the Raiders were doing with him Monday night? It's as if they forgot that he was available to play in the game when he was questionable all week and ended up playing.
I don't know that I'd be worried about him. I think he's with Aaron Rodgers no longer his quarterback, or Derek Carr, who he had a really good rapport with because they played at Fresno State together. He's going to have some down weeks with Garoppolo, especially if Garoppolo gets hurt, and Garoppolo's already missed a game, when they had to start Aiden O'Connell. So and he was a player that, not that I was super concerned about him, but like Devontae was not going to be like a top 3 fantasy wide receiver this season. I thought he'd be certainly top 10, maybe top 12 at the worst, but there are going to be some down weeks. The good news is that he's got the Patriots this week. So there's a little familiarity there with Jimmy Garoppolo, Josh McDaniel. I think he'll bounce back. Jacoby Myers, this is a good revenge game. And speaking of Myers, he's actually been really good this year. Like, we think about Devontae as the elite wide receiver, and he is. But Jacoby Myers has been pretty darn good when he's played. He missed a game because of concussion, but he's been overall very solid from a fantasy perspective. I would start him certainly this week against New England. And Devontae Adams, he'd have to really go into a statistical spiral downward to really even consider ever benching him. Unfortunately, sometimes even the elite guys have an off night.
Michael Fabiano, our guest, the fantasy football expert and analyst for Sports Illustrated. Time for Fab's 5, start 'em and sit 'em. And we start at quarterback in your starts this week. Matthew Stafford taking on the Cardinals. You like the matchup for the Rams?
He has got all of his weapons now. Cooper Kupp came back and looked like Cooper Kupp. He's got Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams. This is a good matchup against the Cardinals. They've given up 21-plus points to 3 quarterbacks this season, including Daniel Jones, who's on the waiver wire now in a lot of leagues. People don't even want to roster him at this point. And by the way, he's not playing this week. It'll be Tyrod Taylor in a revenge game against the Bills, which means start the Bills defense. Speaking of the Bills, James Cook, really good play this week. You've got to like him against the Giants. The Giants are a mess right now, guys. They're an absolute disaster. And Cook wasn't really good last week. I think you forgive and forget. He'll be fine this week against the G-Men. Raheem Mostert will play without Devon Achane. That's good news for Mostert. And they're playing the Panthers, who have given up the second most points to running backs. So Mostert's a must start. I like DeAndre Swift this week. I like Jordan Addison as well. Jordan Addison's got a really good matchup against the Bears, as we just talked about. And then Michael Pittman Jr. Michael Pittman Jr. had 10 points last week. I was somewhat disappointed in the production, but look at the matchup he's got this week against Jacksonville. He has scored over 20 points in each of his last 3 games against them. And even though Gardner Minshew's the quarterback in Indianapolis, I am not concerned about Pittman. I'm going to continue to start him.
Minshew's interesting. I'm down to Gardner Minshew starting in one of my leagues. That's how bad it was. I had Rodgers, then I had Richardson. Now I'm lucky enough to get Minshew based on the depth that's on the waiver wire currently. And the way that they run the football, I would like to load up on both running backs in Indy as well, because they run a ton whenever Minshew's in the lineup.
I would love to see Jonathan Taylor start getting the majority of the work, but Zach Moss is making it really hard for Shane Steichen to take him out of the lineup. He was great last week, and the Titans have a really good run defense, but Moss was dominant, and Jonathan Taylor was a secondary player. Now, you don't pay a guy $40-something million as a running back to be a secondary player. At some point soon, maybe it's this week, maybe it's the week after, he will be the featured back for the Colts. But right now, that backfield is really hard to project because Moss has been so good. But I would expect that the touches would be closer to 50-50, maybe even a 60-40 share favoring JT this week in a matchup against Jacksonville.
Chad, where are we starting on Fab's 5 for the sitting this week on the bench?
Hopefully my entire team, the way they performed so far this season. But you've got better ideas than me, Michael. Who are you going with to sit this week?
I'm sitting Jared Goff. Like, Jared Goff is – do you guys remember when Ben Roethlisberger for a time in Pittsburgh, when he was playing at home, he was a must start. On the road, he wasn't very good. That's Goff now. Jared Goff in road games dating back to last year, 8 touchdowns, and he's averaging 11.7 points. Like, it's just a weird trend, but it holds water, and every week it seems to come up. So I'm going to bench Jared Goff this week. Brian Robinson is a start him and pray, I guess you could say, against Atlanta. They've given up the fewest fantasy points to running backs, but running backs are so hard to come by, especially guys who are getting volume. You probably have to play them. Rashad White, same kind of thing. He's getting volume. He's just not producing. And the Lions defense have allowed one running back to score more than 10 points against them. Their defense has been really good against the run. At wide receiver, we've got 2 big names. And I know most people got to play them, so temper your expectations. Deebo Samuel's had 3 targets in the last 2 games combined. And the Browns have given up 1 touchdown and the fewest fantasy points to receivers. Their defense is really good, and they're at home this week. And the defense is going to have to step up because they don't have DeShaun Watson, and they don't have, of course, Nick Chubb. And then Tyler Lockett's had 1 good game this year. Every other game's been in single digits. The Bengals are tough at home against wide receivers. I think if Lockett scores this week, it'll be out of the slot. But this is a player who goes back and forth from the slot to the perimeter. And the Bengals are tougher against perimeter receivers. I would beware Tyler Lockett this week. There are some other wide receivers too, big names like Amari Cooper against the Niners or Terry McLaurin against Atlanta, who are hard to sit. But boy, the matchups are not good.
So we have a viewer submission for you, Michael. Deontay Foreman at running back or Amari DiMercado in Arizona to start this week?
Here's the thing. Right now, since we haven't gotten the Cardinals injury report for Friday because they're on the West Coast, I don't know who's going to start in Arizona. It could be Keontae Ingram. If Keontae Ingram practices today and he plays on Sunday, he'll start, which will leave DiMercado as a secondary option. So right now, I'm going Foreman because all the Bears running backs are hurt. Khalil Herbert's not going to play. Travis Homer's not going to play. Roshan Johnson's not going to play. So right now it's Foreman. But we've got to wait and see what the Cardinals report is for Friday. And if Ingram was actually able to play, he might be the better option. But right now it's Foreman.
I know you said temper expectations earlier on the receivers you're sitting, including Lockett. Should I have expectations through the roof for CeeDee Lamb after he's questioning the Cowboys' offensive identity and wanting more targets? Because, I mean, typically whenever receivers say they're always open, they tend to get the football. You mentioned JJ in Minnesota. We've discussed that. Of course, with what we saw this past week with Cincinnati, is CeeDee Lamb next up?
Squeaky wheel, man. Gets the oil, right?
Yep.
Gets the grease, whatever you want to say. The Cowboys offense better be better this week or they're going to get crushed in the media, and every Cowboys fan, including this one, is going to be even more disappointed than he or she already is. Let's put it that way. I think CeeDee Lamb has a big game. I think the Cowboys win the game. My buddy Austin Eckler is going to be back this week, and I texted him over the course of the week, and I said, dude, why do you have to come back against the Cowboys? Can't you sit out another week? Like, no. But he's coming back, and I think he'll have a big game. High-scoring game. Keep in mind, Kellen Moore knows the Cowboys' offense tendencies and the defensive tendencies because he was the OC there for the last several years. But this is going to be a high-scoring game. I think CeeDee Lamb has a big game this week. Again, when the wide receiver position, and we've seen some divas, and CeeDee is not a diva at all.
Yeah.
But when they come out and talk about getting the football or not getting it, typically that week, the offensive coordinator, or in this case, Mike McCarthy, makes sure he gets him the football. So I feel good about CeeDee Lamb.
Final thing for you, other than Kelsey, among the Kansas City receivers, in the leagues that you're in, and it's a handful, how many Kansas City receivers do you actually have on your rosters?
I think I have Rashee Rice in one league.
Isn't that crazy?
I don't want him.
It's crazy.
I had Kadarius Toney in a couple of leagues. I cut him. I mean, even though he scored a touchdown last night, didn't do anything else. He's not involved. The Chiefs, and I said this in the preseason on my show, Fantasy Dirt, over at SiriusXM, they're not going to the Super Bowl this year. They're not. It's hard to go back to back. And I know people will say, well, they didn't have a good receiver last year. Juju was there last year. Not great, better than what they have now. And they had Mecole Hardman, who got hurt, and Hardman was putting up some pretty decent totals before he ended up going down. But I just feel like with Kelsey, 34 years old, and he's still great, but we saw him hurt his knee. Now he's got the ankle. Yeah, are we starting to see some cracks in the armor for Travis Kelce? He's dating Taylor Swift, although that's, to his credit, good for him.
Yeah.
I don't know that the Chiefs' offense is as good as it's been in recent years. And I wanted them to sign DeAndre Hopkins in the offseason. And I really hope they go out and trade for a wide receiver. I guess it won't be Jerry Jeudy based on what Steve Smith said about him last night.
Doesn't sound like it. You're right. Hey, Michael Fabiano, the best. Check him out on SiriusXM, also at SI. Thank you so much. We enjoy this each and every week.
Thanks.
Good luck, guys.
Same to you. Michael Fabiano, our fantasy
Always
football
has the good
insider
advice.
from SI. That's
Take
right.
his advice every time.
Coming up, Philly back to the NLCS, and a big college star returning tonight across the gridiron. That's next on Hot Mic.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey.
Welcome into OutKick, the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
There's no doubt in my mind he could have caught the ball in his back pocket if he'd been running. Blowing a lead and losing a game is 100 times more lasting and painful in some clubhouses than losing the game 15-0. If I had to start a list in the last 10 years of horrible underachievers, he's at the top.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Bold taste of a Southern legend.
Just like that, the second hour is here. Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick Network. Friday edition of Hot Mike has arrived. Hopefully the afternoon for you will go by as swiftly as it has for us thus far. Coming up in 20 minutes, Michael McHenry, the Fort. He's in studio with us in Music City. He'll join us here at 6th and Peabody. We'll break down the MLB playoffs, the postseason, and the teams that are not represented, my Orioles and now Chad's Atlanta Braves, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'd say Fort's Braves, too, to some extent. Okay. It was his pick to win it all. I got very excited because I'm standing here, 6th and Peabody, sitting here. Sometimes I want to stand up. I get a bit of a headache at times, Hutton, just from having my neck in a certain position to where I give myself – I haven't had a migraine since I was in the 6th grade, but I feel like I almost have a migraine just because my head, I want to get a little loose at times. Yeah. I want to stand up like McAfee does at the desk, but
pick a podcast. We could do that.
Yeah, but then it would be like a torso shot of me if I stood up. So I don't think that'd be good for anyone. But
Chad will be the first to admit the torso is
too long. Too long of a torso. Too long. Not something you normally hear about. Something that's negative for a guy, but for me, that is in fact the case.
The torso.
I'm looking this way, torso only. I'm looking straight ahead, Hutton, and what I see, I see people, especially on Fridays, roaming through, sampling moonshine, grabbing mason jars. And I look up and I see Michael Fort McHenry right there staring back at me and got very excited. It was like going home. It was sort of a homecoming.
Migraine gone, is what you're saying.
Not seeing him on the Zoom feed, but seeing him right there. It was like my very own Zoom box that I could see through the window as he's looking at me. Confirmation that he is, in fact, in the house and here. He's ready to go. I'm ready to talk some baseball with him. I'm not excited about talking about the Braves losing to the Phillies.
Right.
But that's what we're going to do right now, I believe.
Yes, we hit the top headlines of the day, scorched earth across the OutKick Network, and we start with the Phillies and the dominant performance by them. We've harped a lot on the bats for Atlanta cooling off as soon as the regular season ended. But, Chad, this is props to Philadelphia. And you called it whenever they were battling for the positioning of the postseason. You said, hey, this is shaping up to be an Atlanta-Philadelphia matchup that is not good in terms of your outlook. You didn't think it was the best possible outcome despite the record-setting season for the Braves.
Yeah, and look, it's a good reminder that the Phillies have a much higher payroll than the Braves.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got a star-studded lineup, too. So while the Braves were, I think, 15, 16 games better or whatever it was than the Phillies in the regular season, doesn't matter when you go head-to-head, and especially doesn't matter in a 5-game playoff series. I much prefer 7. I'm not saying the Braves are winning 3 straight to beat them, but you're going back to Atlanta with a chance, and it's not such a short series. So that part of it I've absolutely hated. Hats off to the Phillies. Hats off to Ranger Suarez, who I thought was brilliant in Game 1 and in Game 4 last night. He went right after the Braves hitters. I mean, he was ahead 0-2 over and over again, not messing around, not trying to get guys to chase. He was going right after the Braves, throwing tons of strikes. And the Braves just did uncharacteristic things at the plate throughout the series, and it ended up costing them. Kudos to the Phillies, 2 years in a row now. They've upset the Braves as the lower seed. They're on to the NLCS for a second straight year. We'll see if they can get over the hump this year and win it all. But Nick Castellanos was huge. 4 home runs in 2 days for the Phillies. And these were no doubters. These were absolute rocket shots that he hit for home runs. You knew right away the thing was gone.
And Chad, this is where you would insert and say, and of course it happens against the Braves where Castellanos, he has consecutive multi-home run playoff games. That's the first in MLB history. With that. Plus, you've got Turner, who was the first Phillies player with a 4-hit playoff game. So, yeah.
Well, even
they got the bats rolling, and Atlanta didn't.
Well, the 8th and 9th inning, the Braves had a chance. It's 3-1. They load the bases. They had 2 outs, 3 straight walks, load the bases for Ronald Acuna Jr., who has his chance, has his moment, and he hits a good ball deep in the gap, and it's a good catch at the wall to end the inning.
Track, yeah.
And then the biggest disappointment is Braves get him 1st and 3rd after a Sean Murphy hit. Ozuna gets on with a walk. Murphy gets a hit, moves Ozuna to third with some aggressive base running. And it's 2 pop-outs to short and a strikeout to end the game. Can't even get the 1 run home. Again, just disappointing offense for a Braves team that you wouldn't have said that all season about their offense being disappointing at all, and it was throughout this series.
Chad, Colorado, the Buffaloes, prime time. Well, they're playing in prime time tonight, 9 o'clock kickoff. And it sounds like two-way player Travis Hunter is set to return. All signs pointing to that. That's coming through ESPN. He's missed the last 3 games after leaving with that injury in their Week 3 win over Colorado State, where he took the shot to the liver. And he's back in 3 weeks. The lacerated liver, that description of an injury, sounds like it should be more than a 3-week issue, just by the name of said problem. But here's Colorado. They're playing Stanford, I believe, this evening, and a chance for another victory. And the return timetable that Dion put out there to begin with is spot on. It's been 3 weeks, and here he comes right back into the lineup.
Well, lacerated liver or spleen, something you normally see in a car accident. And you see it on the football field at times as well. It sounds really scary, and I think that it is. But it's one of those injuries that it's just time and rest, and it heals itself. I don't know. 3 weeks seems awfully quick to me when I hear an injury like that. But good for Travis Hunter. He's going to be back out there tonight for Colorado. I know Deion Sanders doesn't like these late-night games. I think it's an 8 o'clock local time kickoff tonight against Stanford. But you're going to see a lot of this.
He said it's the dumbest thing ever.
Well, one of the reasons that the Pac-12, or at least the old Pac-12, was going to be somewhat useful, those teams I'm talking about that have now moved on, is because you get a late-night window. So you can expect now that Oregon and Washington and USC and UCLA have moved on to the Big Ten and Colorado's moving on to the Big 12, networks are going to use that 8:45, 9 p.m., 9:15, 9:30 slot. They're going to utilize that to get an extra 3-hour window in for programming. So get used to it. You're going to be one of the far western teams in the Mountain Time Zone in the Big 12 now for Colorado, so I don't think it's going away for Deion.
Yeah, I mean, he's had 3 games this year, though, with a 10 a.m. local time kickoff for him and the Buffaloes. His quote, he says, "Who makes these 8 o'clock games? It's the dumbest thing ever, the stupidest thing ever invented in life. Who wants to stay up till 8 o'clock for a dang game? What about the East Coast? Do they even care about ratings or anybody watching? What are we supposed to do with the kids all day until 8 o'clock? What are we supposed to do in the hotel?" He mentioned the ratings. Chad, the late game earlier this year, the Colorado State matchup, kicked off at what time? 10 o'clock Eastern?
Yeah, I want to say it was like 9:30.
And how many millions of people tuned in for that?
It was Pac-12 After Dark, and a lot of people watched.
20-plus million.
People tuned in at like, was it like 2 a.m., 1 a.m. or something on the East Coast?
You said that's when it peaked, I think.
When the game was ending. So, yeah, I mean, people will watch. Look, Deion Sanders sounds like me. You get a little bit older, you get up early in the morning, and you want things over with early in the day. I love a nice 9 a.m. softball start time to coach. That's what I have tomorrow morning, so I get it out of the way early. Deion sounds way older than he actually is when he's saying, these 10 a.m. games are great. I don't know what we do with these kids all day. Going to sit around? How are people going to stay up past 8 p.m. to watch us play? A very old man stance from Deion Sanders. Deion Sanders is quite the paradox.
Yes.
In that while he wears the sunglasses and at times the cowboy hat and he's got the bling on and
perception is not reality there.
He doesn't talk like most
except for the ego.
Older men speak, right? He's way more in line with kids of today with his swagger and his attitude. He has an old man's mentality. And he is very old school the way he coaches that team, the way he talks about sports, the way he talks about life, the way he talks about leading people. It is extremely old school in a sport that's getting younger and younger, even the way the coaches approach it. So I kind of respect that part of Deion Sanders. But, look, I get it. If you're a coach, you're wanting to get the game out of the way, and you're not going to want to sit around a hotel all day. We talked about that before, knowing coaches, they hate that. A night game, when you're sitting around all day waiting for it to happen.
It's a long time.
But it's part of the deal. You get slotted where you get slotted through your network agreement, and
if you're the better team, you're going to be in there.
Guess how much money these coaches are making in large part because of that TV deal. That's part of the bargain you make when you sell out to networks and TV times, this is what you're going to get.
Chad, you mentioned old school approach to certain things with Deion. Old school bitterness is how I would describe right now Jerry Jeudy and former Panthers great and NFL great wide receiver Steve Smith, who had some words last night for NFL Network. And first off, props to Mike Garafolo and Steve Smith for bringing it up on air to describe the situation. But like many, Steve Smith is way more versed to speak on the wide receiver position than many, but like many, not pleased with what he's seen from Jerry Jeudy, because on his podcast, Cut to It, he recently said that and called Jerry Jeudy Jag, or just a guy. And it's been thrown out there a lot as a motivating factor, not for Jeudy, but other receivers of the past. We've certainly, Chad, locally, we saw that happen with Justin Hunter here in town, where many were saying he's a jag, he's just a guy.
Yep.
If you're a superstar or want to have the superstar mentality or used to being treated as such, Jeudy certainly had that in college. He's got the expectations now in the league. That's a slight, and that's a big one, because there are plenty of guys in the league that are just a guy with higher expectations than what they're producing. So Smith went on and through his description on NFL Network said that he tried to go up to him to smooth things over, explain where he's coming from, and Jeudy wanted nothing to do with it. As he approached Jeudy pregame last night, he said, "I don't mess with you. I don't want anything to do with you." And Smith went on to say on the air, "I'm sorry I said you were a jag, just a guy who's an average wide receiver they used in a first-round pick on that is not doing anything. I hope today you actually show up in a way that you haven't shown up in the last couple of years since they drafted you. So if you ever got a problem with Agent 89, I'm sorry for saying that you were an average wide receiver that they will eventually move on from. When teams call me to ask if they should trade for you, I'll say no. Don't trade for Jerry Jeudy, because his mentality, he's unable to handle constructive criticism, who watch specifically if you can be a wide receiver. He's a tier 3. That from Steve Smith. Old school is Steve Smith, and at least in the case of Jerry Jeudy, he's not going up and smoothing things over as if he doesn't pay attention to the noise, when he in fact did and wanted nothing to do with Steve Smith afterwards.
It's very thin-skinned of Jerry Jeudy, first off, especially if Steve Smith is apologizing. I don't think Steve Smith owes him an apology based on the lack of production from Jerry Jeudy, first off. I mean, him saying he's a jag, just a guy, not the worst thing you can say about someone, and he's right. So he actually went up and tried to apologize, and this is the response he gets. He said, "Ninja, I don't mess with you." I guess he's using that word as opposed to what he actually said.
Yeah, that's what he said last night.
Yeah, he was trying to exchange words. Okay, I wanted to clear that up because I saw that in the actual quote. And I watched the video, and I'm thinking, okay, now I get what word he was trying to cover up for. Also not great. This makes Jerry Jeudy look really foolish. And I absolutely love the fact that Steve Smith basically went Conor McGregor, where he said, "I'd like to apologize for absolutely bleeping nothing." After he said that, he got that response from him. And he goes on to say how you're an average wide receiver and you were drafted in the first round and you're disappointing everyone. I want to apologize for that. This is like I want to apologize if you're offended. If you're offended, I apologize. I love it from Steve Smith. I think Jerry Jeudy has been a disappointment, and he needs to suck it up and take it, especially when a guy who's a lot better than him as an NFL receiver is trying to apologize to him.
Here's the other thing. Props to NFL Network and the NFL Game Day show pregame, where you have the setup for Steve Smith, who had no problem describing what had just happened.
Yeah.
In real time. So often behind the scenes, you can't do certain things, or they want you to shy away from speaking your opinion, or if it's the opposite of whatever's going on with the tone or tenor of who you're working for, keep it to yourself. We don't subscribe to that.
No.
And in this case, the NFL Network's own didn't either. And I love it. Instead of just moving on to the next topic on Jerry Jeudy, Smith was just like, yeah, ask me anything about it. I'm going to tell you exactly what's going on. He even covered up his own language that he heard from Jerry Jeudy in that.
I love it.
It's fantastic.
I love that there wasn't anyone from NFL Network saying, don't talk about that. Don't. That
well,
was
Garofalo
pre-games on the field.
Too, yeah.
Don't talk about it. But yeah, Garofalo asking him it, Steve Smith being honest in his reply, giving details of what went on. He didn't go nuts or anything.
No. But
he got fired up as he was telling the story, and you could tell he probably wanted to say more, and you could sense that inner competitor in Steve Smith coming out as he's telling it, and then he's saying exactly what he believes Jerry Jeudy is this point in his career. I love the whole thing.
And I loved, from the studio show, the toss to Garofalo and Smith for the on-field, just the feel of what's about to happen on Thursday Night Football, right? Their report. Let's go live to the field. That was their report.
Yeah.
That is authentic and genuine and perfect for how you build up something without making it about yourself. I mean, it's about Steve Smith, but it was real. It's not him being criticized. It's him discussing a wide receiver and whether or not he backs up what he said on his podcast, and he went into further detail about it based on the interaction or brief interaction.
I loved it, and Jerry Jeudy takes the L on this one.
Oh, yeah.
Big time.
The Giants have taken plenty of L's this year. Daniel Jones will not play for the New York Giants with the neck issue. He's been sacked 17 times over the last 2 games, 2 outings. He's out. Tyrod Taylor is in as the Giants hit the road, short road trip for them, in Buffalo. Bills and Giants. And the Bills should be able to feast. They should be able to feast.
Tyrod Taylor gets a shot against his former team where he was a starter.
Tyrod Taylor's had plenty of former teams.
He's had a lot of teams.
A lot of revenge games.
A lot of teams.
Michael McHenry in studio with us next. We discuss the MLB postseason and who's left.
The idea that we believe all women is total nonsense. As I told you, my sister, a 25-year prosecutor, made that very clear to not only me, but certainly her son, my son, and my nephew Pete. They're all the same age, these boys. But she also warned him of women like this cretin here, this gold diggings clown that decided I'm going to get my hooks into a big league ball player. I mean, look, big league ball players are dumb sometimes, but everybody's dumb sometimes. And Trevor Bauer, a guy named John Heyman, wrote an article which was titled, "Bauer Has Lost His Career and Deservedly So." You'll never hear John Heyman, who by all accounts is a famous baseball writer, apologize. You will never hear any of these fools apologize because our print media is the worst. Now, we're lucky here at OutKick that we have great people. But the national print media, the dudes that are out there, the Greg Doyles of the world, the John Heymans of the world, the Dana Bembaus of the world, this Molly Knight who reported that this woman had a fractured skull. That's right. This idiot Molly Knight works for The Atlantic, and she got fired, excuse me, I guess, I don't know. Molly Knight is her name, not Wright, Knight. She, honest to God, wrote that this girl got her skull fractured. I looked up Molly Knight. Molly Knight is now basically unemployed, and of course, her Twitter is protected. Of course it is. This lady, Molly Knight, is a ridiculous fraud for printing that. It's all in The Athletic. It's in the affidavit. This woman, of course, went cowardly like all writers do when they're wrong. Ain't nothing wrong with John Heyman or Molly Knight coming out and saying, hey, what can I tell you? I got it wrong. But they can't do it. They can't do it because they're little posses that get a little bit of power and they don't know how to handle it. John Heyman is a little scrawny guy like Doyle that got a little bit of suck as they've gotten older, a little bit. And like politicians, they don't know how to handle it. They're the worst of the absolute worst. I got a guy from Iowa telling me, no, there's some really good writers. Yeah, Armando is. Yeah, the guys that write here are. But we're not bound by the same stupidity of USA Today. We're not governed. You can write freely here, and you can write the truth without fear of retribution as long as it's the truth. Can't do that in mainstream media, or they won't do that in mainstream media. There's got to be a bias. There's got to be an angle. There's got to be a push. If you're a woman, there's got to be a push. If you're black, got to be a push. If you're white, got to be a push. Got to be some kind of bias. I learned the other day, this was pretty funny. I know that if you do not agree with the liberal side, you will be called a name. I got a family member that calls me far right. I'm like, really? I don't even know what that means, but I get it. You're a liberal, so I'm far right. You got to call me a name. The world is insane. Good for Trevor Bauer. Cubs, sign Trevor Bauer. I'll wear a damn Trevor Bauer jersey. And you can kiss my backside on any of them. Any of them.
Coming up in 20 minutes, Kelly in Vegas will join us. We'll get the top plays for your wagering weekend. Always money, on the money. Just not Megan making money, Chad. Kelly in Vegas.
Yeah,
on the show.
Thanks for clarifying that for me, Hutton. Sometimes I have problems deciphering between the two. Inside joke.
Well, Clay's called Kelly Megan.
I once accidentally spoke to Kelly in Vegas as she was Megan making money. And I'll never live it down. Let's be honest. I'm never going to overcome that.
6th and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow. Also, coming up in 40 minutes, Chad's got his top 10 games of the college football weekend, detailing what to watch and why. Maybe throwing some picks there as well. In studio with us now, Michael McHenry, former Major League Baseball catcher, now MLB analyst, and in studio. Great to see you, Fort.
It's good to be here. I got my Oktoberfest. Very happy to be here. It is a wild, wild scene out there. Great music, good people.
Place is packed, isn't it?
Yeah, I got some great conversations. A guy from Canada wanted me to have an accent, and he was frustrated I didn't. I said, listen, I've moved all over the country. I don't have an accent. He was like, just say the A. Say the A. I was like, I don't have the y'all thing going on. He did not accept it, and he started bringing up all his
all he has to do is make a balloon animal also, a balloon bicycle, like Vince Vaughn.
Listen, you will be my clown.
Come on, just be funny. Do something. Dance for me, idiot.
I had to juggle, and then my shirt came off. It got weird, but that's no big deal.
Spin me a yarn, you yokel moron. Come on.
Come on, you jackal.
The Canadian
what
could
words
literally.
do you say incorrectly down here?
He could literally look anywhere else in the building with 1,000 people here and ask them.
Yeah, where's your Canadian tuxedo, sir? Please put that on. Why aren't you dressed like a Mountie, you moron? That's what you should have said to him. That pisses me off for you.
Yeah. We became friends.
A lot of jean shorts and bachelorette parties here at 6th and Peabody. Always fun on Fridays.
Yep.
Wow, you're exactly right. I couldn't believe. I haven't been back to Nashville in a little bit of time. My wife's told me it's like a little Vegas, and it really is. I mean, bachelor parties everywhere. They're riding around in cages like they're wild animals. It's kind of different for me. I didn't know what to think. I don't dislike it, but it's just different.
I read an article that Nashville is the one major city in America that has returned, its economy has returned to 2019 levels.
Wow.
As of last week, the only one to recover to that level. And you see it. You see the economy right here around Nashville. Now, you're in town playing baseball right now, 35 and up. Is that correct?
I'm in town coaching. I may get to play a little bit. A couple guys didn't show up.
You're going to put yourself in the lineup?
Well, I heard this, and I thought you were playing. I'm like, this seems unfair. Quite the ringer.
He may have to.
Former major leaguers out here playing in games. Like, I wouldn't want to face that.
So it's first-time event. It's a Music City shootout. It's the Giants. It's the Braves. It's the Pirates. And I want to say the Indians, but I know I'm wrong. It's Detroit. Excuse me. We always forget about Detroit. Hate to say that, but we really do. But it's a round-robin event.
America forgot about Detroit years ago. Don't worry.
You're exactly right. They have a nice casino, though.
They do.
But at the end of the day, we just play round-robin, a bunch of guys, anywhere from 80 years old all the way down to about 35. If you're younger than 35, you can't pitch. But yesterday I had a lefty throwing about 82 to 85, nasty spin. And it was really fun to see a 78-year-old do a little bit of an Ichiro, hit the ball to third baseman and beat it out. So, I mean, these guys love it. If you want to see pure love for the game, you come out and watch these guys. We'll be playing tomorrow at Sound Stadium. It's going to be a blast.
78 years old, and he's beating out the throw at first.
Dude can run. I'm telling you, these guys take care of themselves. They take this uberly serious. They go around the country and play all over the place. Guys are going for 2 weeks next week to Florida to play the Roy Hobbs event. I didn't know any of this existed. I'm about to dive all in.
My wife has a friend back in Nebraska, and the friend's dad, I think, is almost 80 and pitching in a 75 or 70 and up. He was going to Denver, I think it was, to play in the 70 and up World Series.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, this is a thing? I didn't know that even existed, that you could participate in baseball at that age. But he's a pitcher at that age.
And
crazy.
For everybody watching out there, I've been trying to recruit these two. You know, Hutt said he would come out and maybe do some broadcasting. I think maybe we can get one of the two to play.
I could still snag it.
Yeah, you said you got softball tomorrow. Let's go.
I don't know about hitting a baseball. I haven't done that in a long time. I could hit a slow pitch softball for you.
You know what else you can do?
If you need it.
Coach.
Hey, some of those guys throw slow pitch softballs.
You can also coach.
Just fine.
The win-loss record's pretty good for
I could
Coach
look.
Withrow.
I'm always looking for
Coach
advice
Chad.
and help on coaching too. Maybe I should go out there and watch you.
Let's go.
Go to work
You
and
can be
take
my
some
assistant
notes.
anytime. Let's go.
Let's do it. First base coach over here.
I love it.
I'll be super aggressive. I'll warn you. I'm sending that 78-year-old dude every time. I don't care if he's beating out the throw to first and I'm sending him to second.
Yeah,
I'm
hard
testing
90s.
the arms.
Yep. I love it. We had that conversation.
Hey. Oh yeah. We're Michael McHenry in studio with us. We're surprised with the results of what we've seen thus far. Where right now going to the championship series, Astros, Rangers, and Phillies taking on the Diamondbacks. Your reaction to what we've seen thus far, halfway through the postseason?
Honestly, it's blowing me away, and it makes me look back and say, do we need 7 games like you guys were talking about in that last segment? Do we need maybe a change on how long these guys lay off? I mean, the rust was evident. I mean, especially for the pitching and the hitting. You saw L.A. just almost bow down to the Tampa Bay, the Diamondbacks. I mean, it was remarkable how good the Diamondbacks played and how bad L.A. played. Same thing. You're talking about one of the best historically offenses in all of baseball, Atlanta Braves. They scored 8 runs. I mean, they could not get anything going. They couldn't clump it together. Spencer Strider looked a little bit off. He gave up his first home run above 100. I mean, when you are going and you're playing 162 games and you really don't get much time off, you go right into that wild card and then right into that divisional series, it's a huge deal. I mean, that's a huge help to keep going. That's what you're used to. These teams that had to lay off, as hard as they tried to do simulated games, it's not the same. You have no crowd, and when you have to go into Philadelphia and different places like that, it's a different animal.
What would the players say about reducing that time or speeding up the postseason with days off so that it would, in essence, in theory, remedy what you're just discussing, where those that win and have the week, well, it's back into the groove that they ended the season with?
Money. It's all about money. They're never going to change it. They're trying to go around football. They're trying to do different things. And because of that, they're not going to be able to, fit things in. They're going to do the best they can, but they're going to get away from the weekends. They're going to stay away from college football, NFL, and then you have NHL starting up as well. So all these things are going on.
Tough to do anyway now with all the games every day.
Exactly. So it's going to be tough for them to find a way to do it unless they start the season either sooner or shorten the season, which they're also not going to do.
Well, and this sounds crazy, right? Because it's just it's antithetical to everything you want to do as a competitor and during a season. But isn't it in the Braves' best interest not to win the division next year and to be a wild card team? I mean, that sounds nuts. But they were almost too good in the regular season, and I feel like if the roles were reversed, they would have had an advantage had they been able to beat the Marlins 2 games at home and then played the Phillies.
You know,
Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. And I heard a really cool thought. What if they gave them the option?
That's
option to play. So the Braves would end up playing in that wild card game. And
But what do you think the players would say?
I don't think there's an organization that would opt into doing it.
Mm-hmm.
They would go the Braves route and take the time off and it automatically be in the NLDS and not take the chance. It's also such bulletin board material, right? If you're opting, you're like, you know what, we'll play the Marlins. We'll risk our season in 2 games, 2 tries, because we're sure we're going to beat them. That gives fuel to the fire. But it's just, I don't know, baseball, talk about this, Michael, in that it's such a fickle beast to begin with, right? And you play for so long, 162 games, every day, 1 day off a week, that's it. and you get to the end, and to me it just seems cruel and unusual that when you get to the Final Four of each league, you got a 5-game series. Those need to be 7. Like starting there, let's go 7 games, 7 games, 7 games to win the World Series. That's not too much to ask, is it? And I don't know that's going to hurt the bottom line. I feel like it's going to help it.
Anytime you can play more games, I think it's going to help that bottom line. And I like the 7-game series. I mean, you play the 3, then go right into 7. 3 was unprecedented when they did it. I do miss the one and done. I do think that excitement should come back. I don't know how they want to kind of pull that off, but I'd love to see a 1-3 and then go to the 7 and just keep the momentum going. Let's play every single day just like we do in season, no days off. And I think these guys would stay in rhythm a lot better. We'd see better baseball. I mean, the way Tampa Bay played, I mean, I know they didn't get that time off. They didn't play well. You could see that there was a lot of anxiety going into that game, but we saw that with the teams like the Dodgers. I mean, the way Kershaw pitched, I mean, that is a conundrum for me. He's got to figure it out. But at the same time, it's hard not to get out there and compete almost 8-9 days and then go out and throw. It's just not something you're used to.
Well, here's another possible radical change, and then we'll get into the Final Four that's actually being played. What if the best team in each league got an automatic bye to the championship series? Just one team. Wow. Then you had a 4-team play-in. Those 4 play each other, 3-game series to then play each other in a 7-game series. The winner of that gets the team in the championship series. Now, that's an extraordinarily long layoff for the team that gets the bye all the way to that. But if you really wanted to make the regular season something and not just the pennant chase, but now all of a sudden it is an enormous race to have that best record within the league. In this case, the Orioles and the Braves would have had byes to the championship series in each league. Too crazy?
Yeah, I mean, that layoff would just absolutely haunt you. Yeah, I mean, you think about baseball, we play so many games. I mean, there's a reason why the team with the best momentum going into the postseason ends up really pushing through. I mean, you look, since June 2nd, the Phillies have won over 70 games. They've been remarkable. That momentum last year and this year going into that second half has been so good, and they've really taken off, and it's showing right now. I thought maybe Miami could push, but when they had to play a very, very tough team in Philadelphia, they really had no shot. But you look at the teams with the momentum going into the postseason, that's the team that usually takes off and gets to the World Series. That's exactly what we're seeing.
Well, and I remember talking to you about all these teams in there, and you said it would not shock me if any team got hot in the National League and went on a run and won it. What about these Diamondbacks? You mentioned their dominance over the Dodgers. Now they get this hot Phillies team. What do you think about this NLCS?
You know what changed my mind about the Diamondbacks and how good they could be and how they could make a run is when Mookie Betts interrupted the press conference with the manager of the Diamondbacks, went in and gave him a hug and said, "This guy helped me grow up. This guy was there when nobody else was." That just changed my world, because when a player of his status goes out of his way to make a scene, because this guy doesn't make a scene. He's from Nashville. He kind of keeps to himself, does his thing, and he also does a lot for the community, but he's not going to go out of his way unless you've actually done something for him or really been a man that stood his ground, had high character, high morale, high morals, all those things, and that's exactly what this guy has shown. And then the fact that he came back and gave praise to his coaching staff. One of my favorite people in baseball is Jeff Bannister, the bench coach for the Diamondbacks, and he just poured into, "This guy has helped me so much. We've been an absolute accountability group. He's really kept me accountable through the season. I've done the same to him, but he's told me the truth." And when you have a team that's fighting like that, you see the coaches diving into the pool in right center after they win a game, you can tell that camaraderie is different. So the Phillies have their hands full. I know that's going to start in Philadelphia. That's going to be a big deal, because I think playing there is a different animal. If you don't think there's a 10th man in baseball, go to Philadelphia.
Michael McHenry in studio with us for Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow. Rangers and Astros. Preview the series for us, Michael, and just from the Rangers' perspective, getting healthier and still haven't lost in the month of October.
I'm telling you, and Max Scherzer's on the mend. I mean, think about that.
Yeah.
Max Scherzer's on the mend. Whether he's going to throw or not, him walking to the bullpen, throwing a bullpen, doing those things shows the fight, the grind, the grit he has in his mind. That's going to fire those guys up, because they think, man, if we just keep going, we're going to get our guy back. If we get our guy back, we got something special. And a lot of things that they're doing are hitting right at the right time, and they've got a wild card. They've got the special sauce in Bruce Bochy. That guy is phenomenal. Not only does he have the biggest head in all of baseball, that means that brain is huge, but he's been there. He's done that. I think his presence kind of wore off middle of the season. We saw them fall off, but then postseason comes. A lot of these guys haven't been deep in the postseason. A couple of them won a ring, but then they see Bruce Bochy walk in like it's just another day, and he comes in and speaks. His presence is felt. He's a king when it comes to postseason baseball.
And the Diamondbacks, in the final minute here. Diamondbacks taking on Philadelphia. Expectations for Arizona.
I'll tell you right now, I think Arizona is one of the toughest teams because they're hard to scout. They do a lot of things. They can run, they can bunt, they play incredible defense. If their pitching's on, it's going to be very hard to be on against Philadelphia, what they just did to the Braves. But I'm telling you, that team is scary. I would not want to play them, but so is Philadelphia. It's going to be my favorite series to watch.
Is Philly the loudest stadium?
No doubt. No doubt right now. No doubt in my mind.
There was a different energy.
There really is.
You could hear it even come across in the broadcast.
And if you guys haven't seen the Bryce Harper interview after that last game, how he loves and adores that city, those fans, the front office, you do not hear that from the star player. Remind me the last time you heard that from Mike Trout. You heard that from LeBron James. Some of the biggest players in any sport, when them saying, Mr., Mrs., and also saying, I love these people.
I think he said some of that about DC also, but could be wrong.
Yeah, he could have. Yeah, maybe he just likes where he's at.
May just be kind of who he is. I did like his suit though, with the Philly skyline on the inseam of his suit, and the Philly fanatic.
Yeah, and then he also
coming out of the pocket.
He also had
pocket square.
Yeah, he also had, who was it? He had the Philly fanatic. He had Deion one day.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy is just absolutely killing it when it comes to his clothes.
Deion Sanders played for
McKendry
the Braves,
kills it
by the way.
on the analysis with us. You can follow him on social at @TheFort McKendry. Best of luck, Coach, at all the baseball this weekend.
I appreciate it. We need it. We're down 1 right now.
Michael McKendry's been our guest. Kelly in Vegas is next.
I'm here at the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix, but that's not the only big race that's on people's minds. Let's go talk about it.
There's no way Biden can win again. There's just no way. Even the people that voted for him because they didn't like Trump, now at least have to see senile, not all there. Probably won't be alive for 4 more years.
Are you a Trump guy? Or are you a DeSantis guy? Or someone else?
I don't like any of them.
Who's your dream candidate? Who would you want to run?
Myself. I think the best candidates probably are smart enough not to run.
I just hope there's somebody that's young enough to care about the country instead of their politics.
My fear is they get Gavin Newsom from California. And I think it would be the new cool vote for the younger people, and that's what I don't like.
Who do you think on the Republican side would be able to take on Gavin Newsom?
Great question. As a Republican registered, I love what Trump's body of work did, but they're just out to get him and destroy him, and we won't get things done, which is crappy for me to say. I thought DeSantis was going to be the guy. Trump only has 4 years left. He cannot fix everything that just happened in 4 years. And he's going to be battling indictments and all these false stuff for the next 4 years. We won't get anything done. And it'll just be the stalemate in America. That's why I almost don't want him in. But if he is the leading candidate, that's who I'm going to vote for.
Is there any Democrat that you would vote for, consider voting for?
Absolutely not.
What about RFK Jr.?
No.
Who should our first female president be?
Michelle Obama, of course. Okay. Yeah.
I'm going to go with Harambe 2024.
We have the 2024 presidential race coming up, and I wanted to see who you thought your favorite TV characters would vote for. Homer Simpson, who do you think he would vote for?
Donald Trump, all the way.
Vito Corleone.
Whoa. Whoever advances the cause of the Corleone family. Yeah.
Tony Soprano. If Tony Soprano is voting in the 2024 election, who do you think he's voting for?
I'm going to go Ron DeSantis.
Okay. Why do you think that?
Just seems like a Ron DeSantis kind of guy.
Is this a meatball joke that you're trying to make right now? What about Homer Simpson?
Homer would vote for Biden because he's a dope.
Who do you think Napoleon Dynamite would vote for?
That's a good question. I actually don't know.
There's a right answer here.
He's voting for himself or Pedro.
There's a Viking show, I think.
Okay.
Maybe that's Hulu. I don't know.
So in the Vikings show, whatever the main character is, who do you think they would vote for in 2024?
Probably a A goat or a dog?
I think we have one of those in office right now. So who do you think Jon Snow would vote for in this upcoming election?
I'm going to say Donald J. Trump.
Why do you think so?
Because Game of Thrones is all about drama, and Trump comes with the drama, baby.
Would you vote for Trump from jail?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, probably. Because at that point, what else do you have to lose?
Okay, would you vote for Trump from a jail cell?
Yeah, baby, I will get Trump out of jail.
Would you vote for Trump in jail?
Oh, yeah.
Based as
The thing that Trump needs to remember is there's another political figure that said, I don't recall very well. Yeah. And that's all he's got to say.
Is there like a dream candidate, someone that you think could like save us all?
Yeah, Jesus.
Amen to that.
Sixth and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Our thanks to Michael McHenry for coming in studio with us.
We're about to enter the one segment of the week where I'm good at predicting things.
You're very
it's
good.
The only time. I can't predict anything else. Terrible at betting all fall, but this is the one time where my presentations have been nearly top-notch.
What Chad is saying is take his presentations to PointsBet and OutKick.com/bet.
I'm hoping Kelly right now is listening and hopefully, going to take my advice this time.
Exclusively for first-time PointsBet users, grab this unique offer. Right now, PointsBet users get up to $1,000 in second chance bets. If your first bet doesn't go as planned, PointsBet has your back with a second chance. I'm about to really explain the second chance here. Get this offer by visiting OutKick.com/bet.
Tell us what that is, Hutton.
Complete the registration process with PointsBet. Make your first bet. Chad, if your first bet happens to lose, that's when the second chance bets come into play. Remember, terms and conditions
wins,
apply.
There's no second chance. Only if they lose.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you for clarifying.
21 or older in legal gambling states. Gambling problem 1-800-GAMBLER. OutKick.com/bet. We don't lose with Kelly in Vegas, who joins us.
Never.
You can, check out The Fade. OutKick host with The Fade and with Clay Travis on The Fade as well. Kelly, good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you guys too. I'm so glad that Clay and I decided to name our show The Fade, because that is what you should have been doing with me the last 7 weeks of college football. It has been an awful roller coaster ride. So I'm glad to hear that Chad has had some success.
We're wounded but not dead, Kelly. That's what we are right now, right? We've been nicked in the wing a little bit, but we're still sprinting full speed ahead. I am a follower, subscriber, however you do it, on the Apple podcast of The Fade. And I'm enjoying it so far.
Yep.
So either way, great insight. And as I've said before, I've been terrible at predicting. I'm great at reacting to things, terrible at predicting so far. But I have been okay with our presentation to you about which bet to take. But so far, you favored Hutton more. I don't know if Hutton's won his or not.
I've hit
with
twice.
Kelly. Okay.
I've hit twice.
Yeah, it's not been good for Hutton when I agree with him. It has not been good. It hasn't been good for Clay either when I agree with him. I have been ice cold, 4-5 again last Saturday. So I've got to turn it around here this week.
All right, Chad, you up first.
So I'm going to stick with, I think this is 2 weeks in a row I've gone with home SEC favorite by double digits to cover the spread. I think LSU is going to destroy Auburn at night in Death Valley at LSU. And here's why. Teams that have a great offense, LSU has no defense. Teams with a great offense can score with them and make it a close game and make it interesting. Auburn's got a really good defense, not great on offense. I just don't think they can hang with LSU in that offense, even with a good defense at LSU. Give me the LSU Tigers -11 at home against Auburn.
I am taking points here, and I'm playing into one of Kelly's favorite teams to back, although I don't think she's doing it this weekend. Wyoming, taking on Air Force, getting 11.5 points. And when I saw this, I did a double take, just knowing how much the experts have backed Wyoming to begin, and they've gone quiet. Well, Give me the Cowboys. And I know Air Force is going to run the football. They run the football like 60 times a game or something. But 11.5 points. This was 10.5 earlier in the week. I like my bet even more. Plus 11 Wyoming tomorrow night.
I know I have to side with one of you.
Go ahead.
And yes, Wyoming has been great to me. I did not bet them on the money line last week, but they did get the outright win over Fresno State for me. And look, they've looked good through the Mountain West, right? Utah State, San Jose State, San Diego State. This defense has been great. They have not allowed a rushing touchdown in 3 games. But Air Force doesn't need to run the ball. They have an insane air raid. And I made the mistake of betting against this team once before with San Diego State. I'm going to be cheering for you, Hutton, but I cannot get behind you.
Okay. I thought you were going to back it.
Chad.
Come on.
Oh, my gosh.
Come on.
LSU with the win last week with the dagger in my soul to kill the Mizzou cover. While Mizzou, I wanted them to win outright. That pick 6 was just as bad as the pick 6 that got me with Texas Tech and Oregon earlier in the year. You have to kind of look at how tough Auburn's played LSU over the years, right? We know Hugh Freeze is a great underdog. I tried to back them on the road in College Station, and you're right, their defense came to play. That offense was abysmal. And that is why I cannot take Auburn this week against you with LSU, but I'm just going to say buyer beware. This one seems a little stinky, right? You've got this LSU team who kind of came out of Columbia feeling themselves, for lack of better words, right? They had to feel pretty good about that win. But that's just because they're not a good football team. And someone is going to get them. I know that they've had a couple of ugly losses to Florida State, 1 million points scored there in Oxford. But something tells me here that Auburn might shock the world in Tiger Stadium. I just don't know. So if I have to side with one of you, I've got to say Hutton and the Wyoming Cowboys.
This is great. That was,
like you said, it's been great for you. When I disagree with you, it's been great for you.
You want to talk about a roller coaster ride. That was an amazing answer. But, I went through all sorts of emotions, or that I was certain you were going to go with mine. And then the flip-flop back to Hutton in the end was truly remarkable. We need to call this segment now Kelly, if I have to pick one of yours. That's how it starts every time. I don't like either one, but if I had to pick, it would be Hutton's pick. I like Hutton's bet also, but
11.5 points.
What the hell do I know?
Yeah,
That's what we've shown over the weeks.
Vegas always knows. Kelly always knows. Kelly in Vegas joins us. Let's go through your best bets of the weekend. Colorado State and Boise. Boise favored by 8.5, and you like the Rams.
Yeah, I took the Rams at 7.5 here, and I know it's going to be a really popular selection, but that's just because you want to fade Boise as a favorite, bet on them as an underdog on the blue turf, and neither of those come into play here. Speaking of neither of these teams play defense. This is going to be a shootout. I do think the Rams, who can throw downfield, they have a top 5 passing offense, and while they looked absolutely dreadful last week versus Utah State, I expect Troy Horton to have a big game against this Broncos secondary. Do I think this is worth a money line sprinkle? I do. Fort Collins, it's a tough place to play. I think that Jay Norvell has got this fan base a little fired up. I wouldn't be surprised to see late night special here. Colorado State gets the outright win at home.
I normally only pay attention to Hawaii annually in week 0 whenever they're playing someone. You're saying to pay attention in week 7, and they are taking on San Diego State. San Diego State getting laying 6 points. Hawaii, the underdog here. You're taking Hawaii in the points.
Yeah, I am, and I'm not going to be awake to watch this one either. I'm going to have to see when I wake up to watch the London game on Saturday morning if I actually cash this ticket. I think this is a Hawaii team that traditionally gets overlooked, but is bet on a lot because it is that late night bailout special. So I have caught this team from time to time. And last year, one of the games I watched was against San Diego State. Hawaii scored late. There was like 1:07 left. Aztecs offense somehow gets into field goal range, go ahead and winning kick, and Hawaii's guts just get ripped out all over the field, right? I think that is still fresh in the Rainbow Warriors' mind. Boise State, Ohio. Those are the only 2 games that really impressed me with San Diego State's offense this year. Outside of that, they've failed to score 10 points or more in the other games this season. 4 of the last 5 have been decided by 1 score. Brandon Traeger not getting a lot of love. Why? Because he plays for Hawaii. 1,700 yards, 14 touchdowns on the season. He has a little bit of a turnover issue, and that was the one concern I had between going with Auburn in this one or Hawaii as my 3rd leg. But I like this late night special on the island. I would not be surprised to see Hawaii win this one outright.
Kelly, I'm sure that you have actual stats to back some of this up, but it feels like when a team surprises America 1 week at home in an emotional performance like we saw with Louisville over Notre Dame a week ago, it's always tricky the next week if they go on the road. You've got Louisville at Pittsburgh this week. This is one of your best bets. What do you like in this game?
Yeah, this one's not fun for me. You think it's fun for me to bet on Pat Narduzzi?
No.
It's not.
No.
And this team has, their offense is abysmal at best. And usually that's not the types of teams I want to back. But the situation lines up really well here to take Pittsburgh. As you mentioned, Louisville last week benefited from 5 turnovers, and I was kicking myself for not betting them in my parlay. Of course, after the fact, it's so clear to see who Sam Hartman, who has absolutely owned me when I bet against him, that would have a game like that. But look, you got the Cardinals off that emotional win. You've got Pitt off a bye. It's homecoming week. Last season, if you watch that ugly 4th quarter from the Pitt Panthers, they had Louisville dead to rights and couldn't get it done. They've got the better special teams and the defense. As I mentioned, I got to give Jeff Brom the coaching nod here because Pat does some bonehead things from time to time, like kicking field goals on 4th and 1. Let's hope he doesn't do that again and actually shows me that he wants to win a football game, because I do think Pitt has the opportunity to do so here on Saturday night.
Speaking of Sam Hartman, who kills you either way, what do you like in Notre Dame USC?
You know, you brought up the Louisville stat, and that is part of the reason why I was playing Pittsburgh. Teams off a big emotional win, 6-0, that then travel on the road to play a team with 2 losses or more, have not done historically well. We saw this exact same scenario last year in Salt Lake City when 6-0 USC was an underdog and went into Utah Stadium and lost. They did get the cover, though, surprisingly enough. Look, USC, what have they shown us? Lots of offense. Is Caleb Williams going to win the Heisman? Probably. That being said, you've got to think the Irish are a little pissed off. They probably had this game circled prior to that Louisville loss. Maybe got caught looking ahead. I do think that while Lincoln Riley is a good coach, he tends to falter in these spots. I like the Irish in this one. It's now 3, and I think it's 3 for a reason. I think that we're going to see a lot of money come in on USC, and the bookmakers are welcoming it. They're like, all right, well, you guys wanted a 3, here's one.
Utah State and Fresno. And are you taking the underdog here at home?
Well, I was going to take the underdog here at home because I already bet it on Monday, and now I got some news right here breaking on Twitter that Mikey Nee might not be available. We kind of heard rumblings of that midweek here, but man, it was more of a play against Fresno State. As you mentioned last week, I did like Wyoming. They have been a scrappy underdog for me, and they handed Fresno State their first loss of the season. So we'll see if Utah State's offense can replicate what we saw from them in the previous week. But, man, I hate to see that I'm not going to have a star player in my court. This one's probably going to head back to 6, but I did take 6.5 early in the week.
Final college pick for you, South Carolina and Florida. You like the Gamecocks?
Yeah, I do. And I think this is an interesting one. Living here in Florida, I get lots of good Florida intel. And hey, Billy Napier done an okay job, right? I would say that. Okay is about what I would give him. I think a lot of people are giving Florida way too much credit for beating that Tennessee team that they have just absolutely owned forever. I was on Florida in that game, and even I was surprised at how poorly the Vols played. But here is a South Carolina team that I do think deserves a little bit more respect. I think Spencer Rattler is a serviceable quarterback, and we will see this Gators team, who is coming off a bye, and I think a lot of people are giving him a little too much credit here. They're not going to be able to put pressure on him, and we haven't seen them really be able to do so most of the year. I laid 2.5 here with South Carolina.
Kelly in Vegas, ruining the gimmick by saying she's in Florida. Kelly in Vegas with us each and every week.
It's a state of mind.
Check out the
It's a
Fade
Vegas
as
state of
well.
mind is what it
Yeah,
is.
that's right. Check out the Fade as well each and every Thursday with her and Clay Travis, available on OutKick. By the way, her NFL picks this weekend: Rams, Colts, Falcons, Jets, and you can get all of that and more on this episode of the
I'll
Fade
bet them all.
this
I
week.
will bet them all.
Kelly,
I can't wait. I can't wait for you to mush all of my NFL picks, Chad. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you bet your ass. I will, Kelly. And we're going to win. The time to win is
if
now,
Chad
Kelly.
wins again this week on his pitch, I think we both have to back him a week from now.
The turnaround starts this week. I can feel it. I can feel it. I do feel confident, though. My pitch to her always wins. So
Thank
that one's
you,
gonna
Kelly.
win.
There's Kelly in Vegas. Crushing it. Coming up, Chad tells you his top 10 games of the college football weekend, who to watch and why. We'll give some picks as well.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
There's no doubt in my mind he could have caught the ball in his back pocket if he'd been running. Blowing a lead and losing a game is 100 times more lasting and painful in some clubhouses than losing the game 15-0. If I had to start a list in the last 10 years of horrible underachievers, he's at the top.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Bold taste of the Southern Legend.
Just like that, final hour is here on the Friday edition of Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick network. Weekend really started yesterday. Football weekend, that is.
Yeah.
And hopefully the final hour flies by for you. We've got plenty of discussion topics straight ahead. Game previews, picks, and more. Friday the 13th edition, Chad.
I had no idea until I looked down at my phone and saw on X someone have a Friday the 13th post. And right before you said that, Hutton, no clue.
There you go. The costumes will be out at the Withrow household? The scary movies?
No, not as much. The scariest movie that my children will watch is Hocus Pocus 2.
Oh, yeah.
On Disney+.
I haven't seen 2.
That's about as scary as it gets. I tell you what, though, if you just watch a nationally televised game, like on Monday Night Football, ESPN,
yeah.
Every single break, I'm inundated with The Exorcist Believer trailers, and I'm thinking, I have to turn away from the screen. It's horrific what is shown on the screen during commercial breaks. And I'm thinking, this is a kid-friendly game. This is Monday Night Football. I can't even watch it in the background without my kids having nightmares. Right. Let's shake it off. Let's not. Yeah, it's bad.
No nightmares with the college football schedule, which kicks off tonight. Colorado is playing this evening against Stanford. Other games as well, and a full slate of solid games in whatever window you want to take a glance at for your Saturday schedule. It is time for Chad Withrow's top 10 games of the college football weekend.
Need more reasons to watch college football? It's time to bang some hats. Here's Chad Withrow's must-see games this weekend.
Let's call this list the Against the TV Network grain edition of my top 10. Because I am in stark contrast with what the television networks decided were the best games this week with my alignment of the top 10 games. The evidence is in where you can find some of these games being played time-wise and networks they'll be on, but I am thoroughly intrigued. And since this is Withrow's top 10 college football games the weekend, we'll go with my list instead. Let's start with number 10. We're going to go to the SEC. You just heard Kelly in Vegas talk about this one. Florida at South Carolina. This will define the middle to below of the conference in a way that maybe another game on my list will also define it. That's coming up here a little bit later. But I really like this matchup. Billy Napier, Kelly just talked about it. It hasn't been awful. And it mainly hasn't been awful because of a great second quarter against Tennessee, where they dominated and they went on to beat Tennessee by a couple of scores. That's really saved their bacon this year because outside of that, they weren't overly competitive at Utah against a backup quarterback. They certainly weren't competitive at Kentucky, and they let Ray Davis look like Walter Payton against them defensively. And now they get South Carolina on the road. Kelly failed to mention in talking about Florida beating down Tennessee that Tennessee destroyed South Carolina a couple weeks ago before the bye week. So if we're going with transitive property, Florida should win this game. I don't think it's that simple. Playing on the road, especially the SEC, not easy. I really like this game, and Vegas agrees. 2-point spread, that's it. The Gamecocks favored by 2 in this game. 2:30 p.m. on SEC Network.
South Carolina's 3 losses, their losses a combined 16-1. Their opponents on the season.
Not bad. They have played a murderer's row so far, and it's going to be another tough one on Saturday at 2:30 Central Time on SEC Network. Game number 9. Hutton, you've already talked about this one. This could be the battle to decide the Mountain West Conference. Wyoming, perfect in the Mountain West, 1 loss in the season. At Air Force, who's perfect on the season, not just in the Mountain West. Air Force, a little bit surprising, an 11-point favorite in this game. I've been impressed when I got a chance to watch Wyoming so far this year. Had the big win over Texas Tech to start the year. Have not had a chance to watch Air Force yet. Hutton, I'm going to be watching this game, though. 6 p.m. Central, CBS Sports Network. Maybe.
Is this Brando?
Maybe.
No, it's not Brando.
No, he's on FS1. I'm not sure he'll be calling.
Well, give me Wyoming.
Spiro Ditas, maybe?
Maybe. Give me.
I just threw that name out there.
Who knows? Who knows? It's a good game.
One of the Eagles?
I automatically saw this. I have it at 10.5 from earlier in the week. I'm hammering the 11.5 as well with the extra point. Vegas always knows. In this case, I can't figure it out. Give me Wyoming.
I'm glad you said Vegas always knows, Hutton, because game number 8 falls under the what does Vegas know question mark to me.
Okay.
NC State at Duke. NC State with 1 loss in the ACC. Duke currently perfect in the ACC. 1 loss overall. That is with ACC adjacent Notre Dame. They lost a close game. Duke at home, 17th in the country. NC State, no offense to speak of. Brennan Armstrong, the Virginia transfer quarterback, has been benched. But Duke only a 3-point favorite in this game at home. Hutton, you can find this one on the ACC Network at 8 o'clock Central
You'll first have to find ACC Network, and then you'll find the
which
game,
is a challenge.
hopefully. I was really high on NC State a year ago, Chad, with Devin Leary and company. They really let me down. So anytime I see a spread that should be doubled, I go all in against NC State this year. And it's just out of the vitriol I have after last year's predictions. Like, it was more than just a bottoming out. It was a car accident that bad. Give me Duke and double it. I mean, this is a great spot for the Blue Devils, and I'm with you. What do they know that we don't? In this case, I know Duke's good. NC State's just average.
Yeah, NC State rivals Iowa as the most boring Power 5 program that's decent.
Yeah, they muddy the waters. They muddy the waters.
Both programs play pretty good defense.
Yeah.
No real offense to speak of. I don't quite know the identity. I know more of Iowa, but both of them, not a lot of fun to watch. I like Duke bigly in this game against NC State. This game number 7, is one that would have been higher on my list preseason because I was expecting a bit more of these teams, but I still like the game. Kansas State at Texas Tech. The Red Raiders a 1.5-point favorite. Timmy B may be on the call this one. It's on FS1, 6 p.m. Central Time. Kansas State lost on a 61-yard field goal to Missouri. Lost to Oklahoma State. They got 1 loss in conference. Texas Tech struggling a bit also with a loss at Wyoming. But both teams still with only 1 loss in the Big 12. This could be a key game to springboard one of these two teams that both had pretty high expectations, especially K-State in the preseason. This could be a launching point for either one of these programs the rest of the way.
My big take on this game, Chad, just what you alluded to it. I'm surprised that we're in week 7 and neither team is currently in the top 25.
Me too. And Texas Tech, by the way, was my preseason Big 12 pick to win it. Still could. 1 loss. They get this one at home. They're a slight favorite.
I had K-State.
But see, that 1.5-point line tells me Vegas thinks K-State's probably a little bit better.
Yeah.
But they're giving the point and a half to Texas Tech because of home field advantage. Game number 6. Let's head back to the SEC, a game that I previewed a little bit earlier talking Florida, South Carolina. Missouri, Kentucky, big for both these teams. Kentucky ranked 24th nationally, 2.5-point favorite at home. I think Missouri has shown themselves to be the better team so far. I know some might not agree, but I feel like Brady Cook, Luther Burden, a great quarterback-receiver combo. Luther Burden is a difference maker for Georgia. He's a difference maker for Texas. He's a difference maker for USC, Ohio State. Forget about the Missouri that he's playing for. He's a difference maker anywhere. He's that good of a player. 5-star talent coming to play for the Tigers. Both Missouri and Kentucky suffered their first loss of the season last week. How do they bounce back this week? I'm intrigued to watch this game.
Would you call him 5-star?
Yeah.
5-star? Kentucky has had back-to-back transfers looking for that type of talent and consistency. Couldn't find it in Levis. They haven't found it in Leary. Missouri, to me, is the obvious selection here, and UK has an underrated home field advantage, many will say. I like Missouri on the road in this game, especially considering the beatdown that took place on the road for Kentucky a week ago.
Keep in mind, coaches show this week, after that loss to Georgia, Mark Stoops is talking about, hey, if you pony up more money, we can compete with Georgia because they've bought a lot of really good players. Will he make that same complaint about Missouri and their NIL program? If they lose this game, time will tell.
No, because they can compete against Missouri.
True. Yeah. But I think we actually have more money than Missouri, unfortunately, if they lose this one. Game number 5. Tennessee's spending a lot of money in NIL. Don't know they're spending as much as A&M. This is the battle of powerful NIL programs.
The battle
in this game,
of collectives.
Yes. The Collective Bowl in Neyland Stadium this Saturday. Texas A&M at Tennessee. Tennessee ranked 19th. The Vols a 3-point favorite. CBS SEC game of the week, 3:30 Eastern time. The Aggies must run the football. They got stuffed against Bama. They got stuffed on the ground against Miami. We saw how those 2 games turned out. Defensively, think a lot about Tennessee with offense. How about this? And Aggies known for the defensive front, rightfully so. Texas A&M is number 1 in the nation in tackles for loss, number 2 in sacks.
Okay.
Tennessee is number 1 in the nation in sacks, number 2 in tackles for loss. Defensive front, we are looking right now statistically at the 2 best in America. Not many would think about Tennessee with defensive front and getting after the quarterback and getting into the backfield, but that's what they have right now. Hutton, shockingly, this could be a 13-10 game.
Yeah, take the under is what you're saying.
This could be a low-scoring game.
They were expecting rain. Now they're not. The rain should move out by the time kickoff arrives on Rocky Top. A&M, of course, quality group on defense. They're known for that. Tennessee's only allowing, 18 points per game?
Yeah.
On average, less than 5 yards per play. And
secondary's been better than a year ago so far.
On the flip side, when are we going to have the top flight, what many will overreact to and say this is the breakout game for Joe Milton? It's going to happen. He's going to play the A-plus game at some point. And that's when the passing game will take flight. Does it happen here? Does it happen down the road? But if Tennessee has it happen in this game, they're looking at, I think, 9 wins. I think the loser ends up with 7 wins at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think
it's
loser.
It's a big swing for both coaches.
Yeah, especially A&M with the 2 losses already. To me, it's one of those games that it's bigger for Jimbo Fisher personally.
Yes.
It's also huge for Tennessee, though, to win at home, to reach whatever goals they had preseason.
And find out the floor, as you've been saying for a year now.
And I think if Joe Milton just does what he's been doing, which has been okay, but not great, Tennessee's going to win all but maybe Alabama and Georgia.
But you know what I'm saying. When he has the superhuman
right.
effort that he can show, will that be the same week that everything comes together where you still only allow 18 points and you're top 2 in the country in the front 7 on defense? If all that happens, then the overreaction will happen about Tennessee.
Here's a prediction. Joe Milton will have that superhuman effort, and it may be tomorrow. It may be at Alabama. It may be against Georgia.
Right.
They will pull a game out that they probably shouldn't win because of that superhuman effort. And a very much below average bad Joe Milton will lose them a game they absolutely should win. That's my prediction the rest of the way. Game number 4. Let's go back to the Pac-12. The fading Pac-12. Number 18, UCLA at number 15, Oregon State. The Beavers, a 3.5-point home favorite. This game's at 7 p.m. Central Time on Fox. Bruins coming off a win over Washington State. These 2 teams have not played since 2019. UCLA's on the road for the second time in 3 games. The Bruins defense, you don't think Chip Kelly and automatically think defense. Bruins defensively, though, allowed only 1 offensive touchdown against both Utah and Washington State. Another one that could be a low-scoring game in this one, Hutton.
Many think it is a free-for-all at the top of the Pac-12 in terms of who can win it. The winner of this stays alive in the discussion. Although it's bleak, you stay alive in the Pac-12 discussion for the championship matchup.
Game number 3. Let's go back to the ACC. If Mario Cristobal elects to take a knee and they hold on to beat a bad Georgia Tech team, this is a battle of unbeatens in the ACC and a monster matchup. It's still huge. Miami at North Carolina. The Tar Heels a 3-point home favorite. This is the primetime game on ABC, 7:30 Eastern time. Hutton, my question is one that you've posed throughout the week. It's very simple. How does Miami respond after that disappointment? And I believe how they respond is not only going to show a lot about what they are the rest of this season. This could be an inflection point for Mario Cristobal as head coach at Miami. If they don't show up in this game and North Carolina rolls them and they go on to a 7-5 type season, that's not good going into year 3. based on what we saw last week.
And North Carolina is capable of just putting up points at the end of a game against a much improved Miami defense.
Yep.
I just don't the whole mentality of who they were 5 minutes prior to that possession where they had the clock in their favor and the victory formation wasn't called versus who they are now. I think North Carolina rolls in this game because all the discussion has been about last week in Georgia Tech and the loss.
Game number 2. Colin Warner very excited about his Irish headed back home after a tricky road trip just down I-65 south to Louisville, where Sam Hartman was abysmal. 3 interceptions, a fumble in the game, 5 total turnovers for the Irish. Never really had a chance playing that poorly. They get back home, though. They're facing a USC team that essentially has taken a 15-minute break in every game they've played. They've looked awful for about 15 to 20 minutes, and they find a way to pull it out, or they explode with offense in the second half or early in a game. They're undefeated right now. Sam Hartman, can he get it going again against a bad SC defense so far this year? Vegas thinks so. Irish a 3-point favorite, Hutton.
3-point favorite against Caleb Williams and that awesome offense. 3-point favorite, though, because Vegas knows what this defense is and is not. This defense is awful and is not improving. And that leads to losses in a stretch run towards the end of the year now for the Trojans. Chad, your number one game of the week.
Number one game, it's a no-brainer. Oregon at Washington, number 8 at number 7, 3:30 Eastern time on ABC. The Huskies a 3-point favorite.
Chad, coming up, let's dive into your number one game.
Let's do it.
This deserves the hype surrounding what would be a massive matchup if this were on the East Coast. But the West Coast, it's dampened what should be the best college game of the season, right? Think of the brand of Oregon. Washington is the team that everyone talks about but hasn't really watched. They're on full display. And so is the Heisman hopefuls of Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr.
It's always damp in the Pacific Northwest, too. So
time to heat it up.
Pun intended
we
when you say
preview that
dampened.
next.
I'm here at the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix, but that's not the only big race that's on people's minds. Let's go talk about it.
There's no way Biden can win again. There's just no way. Even the people that voted for him because they didn't like Trump, now at least have to see, like, senile, not all there, probably won't be alive for 4 more years.
Are you a Trump guy? Or are you a DeSantis guy? Or someone else?
I don't like any of them.
Who's your dream candidate? Who would you want to run?
Myself. I think the best candidates probably are smart enough not to run.
I just hope there's somebody that's young enough to care about the country instead of their politics.
My fear is they get Gavin Newsom from California. And I think it would be the new cool vote for the younger people, and that's what I don't like.
Who do you think on the Republican side would be able to take on Gavin Newsom?
Great question. As a Republican registered, I love what Trump's body of work did, but they're just out to get him and destroy him, and we won't get things done, which is crappy for me to say. I thought DeSantis was going to be the guy. Trump only has 4 years left. He cannot fix everything that just happened in 4 years. And he's going to be battling indictments and all these false stuff for the next 4 years. We won't get anything done. And it'll just be the stalemate in America. That's why I almost don't want him in. But if he is the leading candidate, that's who I'm going to vote for.
Is there any Democrat that you would vote for, consider voting for?
Absolutely not.
What about RFK Jr.?
No.
Who should our first female president be?
Michelle Obama, of course. Okay. Yeah.
I'm going to go with Harambe 2024.
We have the 2024 presidential race coming up, and I wanted to see who you thought your favorite TV characters would vote for. Homer Simpson, like who do you think he would vote for?
Donald Trump, all the way.
Vito Corleone.
Whoa. Whoever advances the cause of the Corleone family. Yeah.
Tony Soprano. If Tony Soprano is voting in the 2024 election, who do you think he's voting for?
I'm going to go Ron DeSantis.
Okay. Why do you think that?
Just seems like a Ron DeSantis kind of guy.
Is this a meatball joke that you're trying to make right now? What about Homer Simpson?
Homer would vote for Biden because he's a dope.
Who do you think Napoleon Dynamite would vote for?
That's a good question. I actually don't know.
There's a right answer here.
He's voting for himself or Pedro. There's a Viking show, I think. Maybe that's Hulu. I don't know.
So in the Vikings show, whatever the main character is, who do you think they would vote for in 2024?
Probably a goat or a dog.
I think we have one of those in office right now. So who do you think Jon Snow would vote for in this upcoming election?
I'm going to say Donald J. Trump.
Why do you think so?
Because Game of Thrones is all about drama, and Trump comes with the drama, baby.
Would you vote for Trump from jail?
Yeah, probably. Because at that point, what else do you have to lose?
Okay, would you vote for Trump from a jail cell?
Yeah, baby, I will get Trump out of jail.
Would you vote for Trump in jail?
Oh, yeah.
Based as
The thing that Trump needs to remember is there's another political figure that said, I don't recall very well.
Yeah.
And that's all he's got to say.
Is there like a dream candidate, someone that you think could like save us all?
Yeah, Jesus.
Amen to that.
Sixth and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow. Glad you're with us. Happy Friday to you. Solid college football weekend, NFL as well. Thoughts on the top games coming up. Chad just gave you the top 10 games of the college football weekend. And rolling through who he lists, which matchups he lists as the top. Florida and South Carolina. Wyoming Air Force, NC State and Duke. Texas Tech hosts K-State. Kentucky trying to rebound off of a awful beatdown at Georgia.
Both teams trying to rebound.
Missouri loses in a shootout against LSU. That's his sixth best game. Top five, Texas A&M and Tennessee. That is your afternoon kickoff on CBS. Oregon State hosting UCLA. UNC Miami. Very intriguing to see how the Hurricanes come out and play. Notre Dame will host USC prime time tomorrow evening. And Chad, your number one game, Oregon and Washington in Seattle, number 7 against number 8 in the country. And more than that, just from the perception of where we see these teams Sunday. And the quarterback, of course, squarely in the Heisman race, presumably. But also, Washington or Oregon will be featured maybe once or twice more on the national stage than the loser, just based on quality of opponent for both teams coming up and magnitude of the game and what it means for the Pac-12 and college football race for the playoffs.
It's huge. Michael Penix Jr., Hutton, his lowest completion percentage in a game is 73% so far this season. Washington has a number, and their offensive line has been terrific.
Four legit receivers.
He doesn't really have a lot of pressure on him. He's not getting hit a lot, not a lot of sacks. Some of that is by design for the lefty, where he gets rid of the ball quickly. But a lot of that is just really good protection by Washington's O-line. Huskies have the number 1 offense in America. Oregon has the number 2 offense in America, total offense. But here's where it's a little bit different. Oregon, top 10 in the following categories: rushing offense, third down efficiency, scoring defense, and they're 6th in total defense. So I can see where, not that Washington's bad on defense, the slight advantage goes to Oregon as more well-rounded, but Washington's offense is so good, and it's
they
at
start
home.
Fast.
It's at home. They've looked so much more. Oregon looked great against Colorado. Colorado's a 6-win team, okay? Take all the hype out of it. Great start for Deion, all those things. They're a bowl team, but they're probably going to win 6 games, maybe 7. Not a great team. So destroying them at home, while fun for those that don't like Colorado, not a huge deal. Oregon struggled against Texas Tech. Washington, meanwhile, blows out Boise State, blows out Michigan State on the road, blows out a pretty good Cal team that should have beaten Auburn at home. Not a bad Cal team. Washington's looked better.
We should also mention Oregon. They struggled. They won, struggled against Baylor on the road.
Yep.
Tough game. And then struggled early against Stanford. And then ended up being a boat race. They clicked. They turned things on. But even in the struggles, Washington has not started slow. And Oregon has. Now, they've been good enough to overcome those slow starts and win in a lopsided margin if you're just looking at the scoreboard. But Washington's been the more complete, consistent team. But Oregon...
There's no blemish on Washington so far.
Both of these teams, though, could beat anyone in the country currently.
No doubt. No doubt. I mean, I think this is legitimately two of the best right now, regardless of ranking and all that. I think it's two of the best 5 or 6 teams in the country. Not 7 versus 8, which the rankings show. I think with what they've done, you could argue that. I mean, it's been super impressive.
Well, and just Oregon's offense, too. You mentioned number 1 versus number 2. They've allowed just 59 points this year. 258 is how many they've scored, and they've registered at least 38 points in every contest. So
Oregon won
legit.
At Texas Tech 38-30 in a back-and-forth close game. Other than that, they destroyed everyone. Colorado at Stanford by the same score of 42-6. I think the one difference is while Washington doesn't have, I don't think they have a win as good as at Texas Tech on their resume. They've just completely steamrolled everyone they've played, and that's some pretty good teams. Boise State is undefeated in the Mountain West and going to be a contender there. Michigan State, not a good Michigan State team, but the way they won on the road, super impressive. Cal, I mean, it's going to be a huge matchup. There's no way around it. You can try to poke holes however you want in this game, but both these teams are just really, really good. And this Pac-12 conference this year in its final year is terrific.
I'm hoping that it ends up for the Pac-12 where they get representation in the college football playoff, because they're both of these teams legitimately, we mentioned, can beat anyone, which means they're a championship contender. And the Pac-12's been scrapping and clawing at that, and it's few and far between on the years where they've had an opportunity to do that over the last few decades. And it would suck to have this good of a conference top to bottom, really top to half, and not have representation in the 14 playoff this year. That could end up being the scenario. It's likely as getting 2 teams in, because I think we'll see a rematch here of these two. And the loser, if it's a close loss, not if you lose, but how you lose, Chad, I mean, it's not far-fetched to think that the loser ends up winning the conference championship, and you have that team who loses in the title game go in as unbeaten and still get into the playoff.
Yeah.
Based on the other conference plays. I'm fascinated to see this. Also, game day, because of the vitriol that's going on in Seattle with you've got the Huskies and Cougs. The entire conference fan base pissed off at ESPN.
Yeah, by the way, the one game I was forgetting with Washington, they won at Arizona 31-24, which is a better win than what it looks like. Arizona played very close with USC on the road, so Arizona's pretty good. So that's not a bad road win also. No road wins are bad, but that's a decent win there for Washington. Ryan Leaf joined our show yesterday and said he was shocked to watch Pat McAfee essentially take a dump on Washington State after everything that Lee Corso said the week before and what Jake Dickert, the Washington State head coach, said post-game after their team's win. I'm with him. I think it is a little bit crazy for a program with College Game Day that flies Old Red, the Washington State flag, every single game day that's ever been on location. It flies right there, and it's been kind of a thing that they've had. But here's the deal. The Pac-12 hates ESPN, and I get it. They should hate probably every network for that same reason, because they got squeezed out by everyone. Yeah, they didn't get an offer.
Yeah, you're right.
So it's not just ESPN, but I do think that it could get a little bit uncomfortable with the show going to Seattle on the banks of Lake Washington tomorrow morning. 6 a.m. local time is when game day will start. Early, it'll be dark when the show begins. But that's something to watch to see if there's some boos from the audience with College Game Day in-house.
Well, and you go back to even the papers and the reporters from across the conference are citing, even with Chris Peterson back at Washington in 2017 where he called out and said, he didn't mention ESPN by name, but the schedule makers for having all of the late kickoffs, like super late. And Herb Street responded later that weekend and said, from the game day set, hey, Peterson should be thanking ESPN for the relationship with the Pac-12 and the national audience that it provides. And later that night, ESPN had the game, the San Jose Mercury News is going deep on this one moment and comparing it to now, saying that you had the sideline reporter that night mocking Washington's non-conference schedule after they had to address the whole late-night kickoff stuff on game day. And it's kind of, it is reminiscent of that compared to this, where now back-to-back weeks and two different on-set personalities ripping into Washington State instead of Washington.
Yeah, I don't think I think Pat McAfee, if there's like some jeers from the crowd, he's going to handle it well because he's got the pro wrestling background. I think he'll spin off of it, and it'll be funny, and he'll do well with it. I think Kirk Herbstreit's awesome at what he does. Yeah. I don't think Kirk Herbstreit will handle it well. If they start getting mocked or there's boos or there's chants that he doesn't like, he is a guy that will go at it with people on social media. We saw that with our very own Ryan Leaf, where he went after him for criticizing Lee Corso on it. So it's going to be interesting to see.
And McAfee's calling Washington State a waste of time.
Yeah, which could be a great look. It could be great television because of that.
Well, the other thing too is if for the fan bases that are so pissed at ESPN and the coverage and the mocking, if you want to go there, where was the vitriol for conference leadership and the commissioner? Where how many months this offseason, Chad? Like 3 or 4. Did we discuss, we're close to seeing results of a college media rights package and numbers behind it, because Pac-12 leadership continues to say it's there and they have it. It's going to be on par with the ACC and the Big 12. And then they tried to spin it without releasing numbers that it was, in fact, on par with the ACC and Big 12 through Amazon. Or was it Apple? And
Apple.
Turns out that's the high end of the marker based on subscribers, not based on just, the end of the line basement dollar price that you're going to get no matter what, which ended up being $20 million, I believe. And knowing that who was leaving versus who was staying brand wise, you couldn't put your top brands on free TV because you need subscribers. That just didn't make sense. And so the whole thing has been a ruse. And you've got this situation where the mocking is happening because they're a storyline, but they didn't treat themselves as a storyline at the time. They sat back in silence while they were ran into the ground, negotiation-wise.
Well, George Kliavkoff absolutely deserves some responsibility here, but
no,
look,
we haven't mentioned his name in weeks, though.
No, we have.
You know what I mean? Well,
I have. I don't know that everybody else is, but let me give the Pac-12 side of this a little bit, because there's a lot of things that they know that we don't.
Sure.
And there's probably some things they presume that they honestly don't know about how this went down and what went on.
But real quick, I'm just saying, it sounds like Washington State is the one being mocked when really the Pac-12 has set them up in this situation, not Washington State and ESPN.
But it is Washington State getting mocked, and whoever set them up, it wasn't them that did it. And it's them and Oregon State are the only two that couldn't find a home.
You're
didn't
right.
do it. So, look, I mean, if you want to be cutthroat about it, say, well, hey, everybody else was doing their negotiations and found a way out. You should have done the same if you were so valuable. Your loss. You didn't make it happen. I am sympathetic to Washington State and Oregon State in this.
Yes.
I think what went down here was it's Pac-12 presidents know that George Kliavkoff did not do a great job. I think they also felt like the deck was stacked against them from the beginning, and that was no fault of George Kliavkoff when they went into these negotiations. They felt they were on par with, let's say, the Big 12 or the ACC, which you could argue they certainly are.
Sure.
And they thought they were going to get a fair offer and a fair deal that way. And when they saw things breaking against them, and I think Kliavkoff mishandled things with how he tried to look at the numbers, certainly something happened there. But the belief is that ESPN started talking to other programs saying, if you want a safety net or if you want more money in the future, we're only going to deal with a certain number of conferences, so you should probably look around to get into one of those conferences. Only the powers that be in those conferences would know or have caught wind of any type of conversation that went on, let's say, with ESPN in Oregon and Washington behind the scenes about, hey, what would it be worth it to you if we were in the Big Ten? Or if they're talking to the Big Ten, ESPN isn't saying, hey, get these teams. They're the valuable ones. We'll have them also, and that's going to help everyone out. I think, again, I can't get inside their heads. I believe their thinking is the deck was stacked against us, and ESPN conspired with those that left and other conferences to pull them from us, where then we had no shot because they were being offered a better deal that we couldn't offer in that moment.
But even after knowing that USC and UCLA were bolting for the Big Ten, the ESPN, according to reports, did offer the Pac-12 a media rights contract in 2022.
They offered him $30 million. Here's the problem,
which is on par with the ACC and Big 12 and what they would have received and what they were touting they were getting streaming-wise.
Look, they can't blame Klavikov for that because it goes back to the chancellors and the presidents, and they're the ones who decided to turn that down, not him.
No doubt.
Klavikov was then sit back in there, hey, give him this offer. He may not have wanted to do that. But then the counter was $50 million, and ESPN said screw off and wouldn't even come back to the negotiating table. And at that point, I believe ESPN started working with those they wanted in the Pac-12 to move them with the other conferences. And that's what the Pac-12 is angry about.
Meaning which teams? Stanford and Cal, who are joining the ACC now?
No, I think Colorado and those schools that went to the Big 12, part of it. Probably, Oregon, Washington were quick succession. After that,
yeah,
when
they tried, it sounded like they tried to keep it together.
Yeah,
but
all of those.
Nonetheless, it's Washington State taking the brunt, and it'll be worth paying attention to McAfee tomorrow.
Yep.
Coming up, a big preview for the NFL weekend.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation. And pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number one overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male? Play with males. You're born a female? Play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
There's no doubt in my mind he could have caught the ball in his back pocket if he'd been running. Blowing a lead and losing a game is 100 times more lasting and painful in some clubhouses than losing the game 15-0. If I had to start a list in the last 10 years of horrible underachievers, he's at the top.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Taste of the Southern Legend.
Sixth and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow rolls on. Chad, the weekend has arrived. Favorite game, college or NFL this weekend for you, without Tennessee being involved with the Vols? And because that's a great game between Tennessee and A&M.
I mean, it's Oregon-Washington.
Over anything.
Overall. USC Notre Dame's probably right there for me.
Yep.
Man, I'm trying to think NFL. Which one I'm jumping to want to see. Those are definitely the 2 college ones.
You'll be flipping through to see all of them. We're paying attention to all of them. You're like me though. This week in the NFL, it's just kind of there's some good matchups, not great matchups.
I'll give you one.
For me,
Lions at Bucks. It's going to be interesting.
It's a good example of good, not great.
4-1 and 3-1.
Yeah.
No.
Yep. The others are like to me the most intriguing NFL is Seattle at Cincinnati.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Bengals going into a bye after this game, and Seattle's coming off of their bye week. The Bengals coming off the win. Burrow looks healthier, but still it's not about the pain threshold or if the injury's getting worse. It's about mobility. And if Burrow's going to be able to get out of the pocket and move around the pocket for that matter. Jamar Chase coming off of a unbelievable day, career day, and a franchise best day historically for the Bengals last week. That one's fascinating because of the Seattle secondary, not good. Bengals still in the mix, and then they come off their bye next week into a gauntlet run of teams they'll be facing. I still think the Bengals are a playoff team, even with a banged up percent Joe Burrow.
I think this past weekend was big to get them back in that direction.
That's it. That's the matchup of the NFL. In college, you're right. Oregon and Washington. USC, Notre Dame, I'm watching for the atmosphere more than anything. And, is it still supposed to be like a downpour in the forecast in South Bend? And cold?
Yeah, Colin's saying cold.
Bundle
Great
up.
Sign language from Colin, too, giving the shivering sign. That was really good. That was next level. He must have taken some improv classes at the Groundlings or something. Can we talk about West Virginia-Houston finish last night?
Yes.
That was I sent the group a text, and I'm flipping back and forth between Chiefs, Broncos, Braves, Phillies. And then I see...
How did you find this at the perfect moment?
I see a tweet. This is just the benefit of looking at social media while watching sports. I see a tweet, I believe, from our buddy Andy Staples.
Okay.
That says, 1:14 left, and at the time, I think it was 35-32, Houston clinging to a lead, West Virginia ball. So I turn it over. I see a 3rd and 10 incompletion, 4th and 10 for the Mountaineers, midfield. Garrett Green, their quarterback, hit some walk-on receiver, probably 20 yards down the field on 4th and 10, and he runs away from everyone for a touchdown. 12 seconds on the clock. Garrett Green, in a move that would make me want to strangle him if I'm a coach or a fan, rips his helmet off in celebration, starts to run around the stadium, waving at everyone to leave, to get out of the stadium with 12 seconds left, 15-yard penalty. And I'm thinking, that 15-yard penalty will come back to haunt them. Just watch. Kickoff from the 20, decent little return. They had the ball, I think, at the 42 to start, about 8 yards on the one play they have, 2 seconds left, plenty of room for a Hail Mary, tip drill, Hail Mary, touchdown, Houston. And I'm thinking, if you're that quarter, you have got to hold your water better than that in that situation. The game is not over. I understand an emotional response to making a play with 12 seconds left to take the lead. You can't rip your helmet off. You've got to get to the sideline and understand you're lucky to be in that spot where you're now ahead. You just faced a 4th and 10 and scored a touchdown. So get to the sideline and let the game play out. Don't start waving to fans or any of that crap in that moment. Terrible job by Garrett Green. Tim Brando was on the call that game with Spencer Tillman. We need to get him on next week to talk about the finish of that one. It was wild. And then for Houston to win it with the Hail Mary, crazy.
Here's the audio of that. Timmy B.
Spencer Tillman with the Holy Toledo drop. Love it. It was a wild finish. But I am so angry, if I'm a West Virginia fan, at the quarterback for ripping the helmet off in that moment. Just dumb stuff you can't have. Now, is he the reason that the secondary didn't do a great job of playing the Hail Mary and didn't do it? No, he's not. But they put them in that position where they're 15 yards closer, and now they can reach the end zone with that throw. That doesn't happen if you don't take your helmet off.
Chad, your NFL lock for the weekend.
Hutton, I am going with rest and time zone adjustment in my NFL lock of the weekend.
Okay. There's a couple of those this weekend.
The Ravens got out to London on Monday, I believe it was. Got adjusted. They were terrible the last time they were there.
Yep.
Titans went through the same routine they did the last time they were in London 5 years ago. Flew out Thursday, red eye, get there for Friday, Saturday, play the game Sunday, get out. They weren't terrible, but they did get off to a bad start against the Chargers 5 years ago and lost in overtime in that game. I think the Ravens take care of the Titans this weekend. I think -4 was the last check.
5.5,
it's now 5, so it's gone up. I'll still take the Ravens -5.5 against the Titans. That's my lock of the weekend.
Looking at 5.5 over under 45.5. Funny you mentioned Ravens-Titans because normally back against the wall, coming off of a loss, and all of the discussion being about, well, is Vrabel and the Titans, are they in a spot where they're about to spiral? And normally they don't. They're just average. Baltimore's been beating themselves. 9 drops. Went through all the details of the final 9 possessions against Pittsburgh and what was just an awful performance top to bottom for a game where Lamar Jackson early on stood in the pocket and actually threw the football really well. I'm taking Baltimore as well and laying the points, when normally I would suggest not doing that. That's my NFL lock as well. The Ravens on the road, technically, it's a road game for them, taking on the Titans. This is Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Let me be the first to echo what has been quietly covered about Tottenham Stadium. The players hate this turf. Hate it. Calling it out. The Bills especially. The Bills lost 2 players, 2
Matt
key
Milano
starters.
Gone for a while, right?
Due to injury to this turf. And they're already down Tre'Davious White. Chad, the quotes here about how it's the worst that they've played on, Take that for what it's worth because it's an emotional response after the game. But the Ravens have come into go into a game where they've lost 6 fumbles this season. That's tied for the second most in the league. The turf when we see some players leave due to injury, that could circle back up here. I think that the Baltimore's the more talented team. I took the under as well in this because I think it's a very low-scoring game in London, while both teams, I think, get off to a slow start more than a fast one. Although Lamar Jackson, by the way, international star. He's surprised by it. Said he was stunned of how many people own his jersey in England. They're already out.
I don't feel great for the Titans in this game against the Ravens on Sunday.
Here's the quote from Bills quarterback Teron Johnson. "The turf is terrible. My foot got stuck in the ground. Take the turf out. I don't know why we're playing on stuff like that." There you go. And by the way, Jim Harbaugh was asked about the turf.
Is it turf or natural grass?
John Harbaugh.
Is the grass they don't like, or is it turf?
It just says terrible turf. They lament the terrible turf at Tottenham. John Harbaugh was asked about the turf. He goes, you know what? I'm thankful that we have grass in Baltimore, was all he would say. There you go.
Yep.
Could be an issue.
Von Miller ripping $1.3 billion London Stadium for having bad turf.
That could be a storyline. This is the final game, by the way, of the London loop for the NFL. PointsBet, if you haven't taken a shot with PointsBet, now's the perfect moment. The big reason why, exclusively for first-time PointsBet users, grab this unique offer. Right now, new PointsBet users get up to $1,000 in second-chance bets. If your first bet doesn't go as planned, PointsBet has your back with a second chance. Get this offer by visiting OutKick.com/bet. OutKick.com/bet is where you go to complete the registration process with PointsBet, and you make your first bet. If your first bet happens to lose, that's when the second chance bets come into play. Remember, terms and conditions apply. You got to be 21 or older in legal gambling states. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Head over to OutKick.com/bet right now to snag this offer. OutKick.com/bet. Chad, wrong team favored in college football. We've had some hits, some misses. I won last week. Outright winner for Louisville over Notre Dame. I'm up to 20 points on the season. Davey, he's at 10. And Chad, you need a winner.
Yeah,
you need a winner this week.
I'm at 0. This is terrible. And I've been going with bigger lines just to try to immediately get back in the game with a big splash, get back in the competition. The bottom line, though, is I need a win, nothing worse than anything else. That's what I need. I'm going to go with Texas A&M. I think that they have the type of team that will succeed against Tennessee. Good defense, especially against the run. Tennessee's got the best rushing attack in the SEC, but A&M's got the front to sell out and stop the run. They're going to make Joe Milton beat them deep through the air. Give me Texas A&M outright, 3-point underdog against the Vols.
I am taking Missouri on the road against Kentucky.
We're taking two different road dogs.
2.5-point road dog, and I just trust. This is crazy. I just trust in what Missouri is bringing week in and week out offensively. I'm stunned to say that based on preseason expectations. This was a pivotal matchup a year ago early in the season. And now, midway through, is it Missouri or Kentucky that's going to own that second spot in the SEC East? Because they can wreak some havoc on whoever they're competing for after this matchup. And I think the Tigers' offense gets after Stoops' defense in this game. And I don't think Kentucky can keep up. I think it's close for a while. And Kentucky, sure, they can run the football. But I just trust the consistency of what Missouri does. And I know it was a bad LSU defense, but they've been doing it all along, Missouri. I think that carries over, home or on the road.
I agree. I think Missouri's the better team. You know, how much does home field factor in for Kentucky? I'd ask the same about Tennessee. I think A&M is a little bit better of a team, but Neyland Stadium is a big factor, especially recently with Josh Heupel. So how much is home field a factor in that one? Brady Cook is quietly one of the best 3 or 4 quarterbacks in the SEC. Very confident in saying that. Maybe even higher on the list than that. So I like Missouri as well.
And Davey taking Auburn to win. If Auburn wins, he gets 11 points in the competition. He'll have the lead.
Could
if
not
Missouri
be
doesn't win.
further off with my prediction. I think Auburn gets housed in this game by LSU.
What makes you favor LSU based on what we've
I
seen
just think
recently?
LSU has shown themselves to be a team that can score on anybody.
Yes.
That also can get scored on by anyone. So to beat them, you have to have an offense that can score points. I don't think Auburn has that offense. I definitely don't think they have it at LSU at night in that type of environment. So I think LSU wins big.
I'm not previewing Georgia for the first time in a few weeks.
That's the other one. I honestly
Vandy.
considered, Hutton, taking, I think it was 33.5. Georgia, I think it's too low. That's too low against this Vandy team. It's going to be a home game for Georgia, too.
Upset?
It'll be 80, 90% Georgia fans in the stadium.
Could it be upset chance for Arkansas at Bama, given Bama's mistakes week in and week out?
Maybe, but Arkansas has not shown me much this year.
Yeah.
I think if it was someone else a little bit better, coming off that win at A&M, maybe, but I don't think so.
We are back at it on Monday. Hope you'll join us for Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow, 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern, each and every weekday right here across the OutKick Network. Enjoy the football weekend. All the top stories and headlines between now and Monday. Check out OutKick.com.